Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 2021 DelDOT Winter Workshop. My name is John Cariano, and I am the support engineer here at DelDOT, and I will be facilitating this event over the next 2 days. We are excited to bring you a packed agenda today and tomorrow. Today we'll begin at 8 and we'll run to about 11:30, and we have a break planned at 9:45. Tomorrow's session will run from noon to about 3:45. The goal of this workshop is to educate, highlight, and inform DelDOT staff as well as our partners of some of the things that have happened over the last year, some of the things to look forward to in the upcoming year, and further explain some of those items that need additional description. So congratulations, you are all part of history. I think this is the first time we are entirely virtual, as well as we're approaching an attendance record. So with that, I don't have to tell you where the restrooms are, where the exits are, or the smoke off campus. You can all figure that out on your own. But for the other logistics for the Zoom platform, I'm going to turn it over to Todd Revis.
Keep in mind, we're encouraging the use of the Q&A function within Zoom for any questions that you might have. Due to audience size, we feel this will be easier to manage, and we have quite a few panelists lined up to answer any and all questions you might have. Feel free to ask them at any time. If you'd like to view closed captioning, please click on the closed captioning button at the bottom of your screen. We're also recording this event, and we'll be posting it to the DelDOT YouTube channel afterwards. Thank you.
So if you've requested a PDH certificate, you will be emailed a evaluation form after the workshop on Wednesday. One note with that is if you've logged into this with a different name than you registered with, you'll have to email Sandy Wolf with that name or a phone number. If you've called in, the same thing. That was all listed in the registration link today. So again, to receive the PDHs, you need to be in attendance as well as complete the evaluation form by Friday, February 19th, close of business. So at this time, I'd like to introduce Secretary Majeski for some opening remarks.
Morning, everybody. This is not weird at all. I'm literally talking to almost an empty conference room. So, but welcome to the winter workshop for this year. Sorry that we could not be together in person at Polytech like we do each year, but a special thank you to John Cariano and his team, Todd Revis, and the Tech and Innovation team for creating this platform to allow us to all be together virtually this year. So I know this past year has been one that no one could have foreseen, but in spite of everything, you all continue to show up every day, do your jobs, and do them in a ways that you never thought you would do possible. I think this past year has shown just how resilient we all are and how creative and innovative we can be in spite of everything. You've figured out different ways to deliver our services, to do our projects, to serve our customers, and you've done it seamlessly. And I could not be more proud of all of you and everything that you've accomplished over this last year. In some ways, I think we're probably busier than we ever have been before, trying to find new ways to do our jobs, but then all the different things that have been thrown at us with all the different special events, the other duties that's assigned in participating in vaccine distribution. And now, Mother Nature does not want to be ignored this year. After 2 years of really no weather, we've been hit pretty hard over this past 3 weeks. So just a huge thank you goes out to everybody who has just been working tirelessly and just ridiculous hours over this last year. So I always think the winter workshop is a great time for us to kind of take a step back and really reflect on this past year because we are all so busy. It's great for us to take these next few days and to just kind of sit back, reflect on all the accomplishments that we've done over this last year, learn about the different initiatives that are going on throughout the department, and really look forward to the future because there is a lot to be excited about. And I am so excited to, for this next chapter and for the year to come. We have an exciting 2-day agenda for you. Now, because we are all virtual this year, I know John mentioned that you can get your credits, but to make sure that you're all paying attention, there will be a test at the end of the week to ensure that you were paying attention and just didn't have this playing in the background. So you'll have to pass that test in order to get your credits. Just keep that in mind. But we do have an exciting 2-day agenda for you. I'm sorry that Mr. Craig Stevens is not joining us this year. Apparently he is too busy on his comedy tour to grace us with his presence. But I know if you looked at this today's agenda, you're thinking to yourselves, wow, we are going to end the day with a manual update. Manual update. I know, it's exciting. But this year, John is going to do something a little bit different. He's going to give it the manual update via interpretive dance. Not to be missed, folks. And I don't even know if you all thought that was funny because there's no one here really to laugh at my jokes. So hopefully you thought it was funny. But anyway, in all seriousness, thank you all for being with us today. I hope you enjoyed the next 2 days and really, take the time to reflect and refocus for what is to come. So thank you all.
Thank you, Secretary Majeski. Next, we have a pre-recorded message from Federal Highway Delaware Division Administrator Doug Atkin.
Well, thanks for the opportunity to participate in the DelDOT Winter Workshop. I'm Doug Atkins, the Delaware Division Administrator for the Federal Highway Administration. I'd like to give a short update on what to expect in 2021 working with Federal Highway. So, what to expect in 2021? First, we have a new administration and new priorities. In September, the FAST Act was extended through the end of this fiscal year, September 30th, 2021. We can expect to see activities relating to reauthorization that will likely take into consideration climate change, sustainability, equity, environmental justice, and an emphasis on repairing and taking care of the existing infrastructure. DelDOT, through their leadership in resilience, sustainability, mileage-based user fees, and use of artificial intelligence in traffic operations, is ahead of the game. The Consolidated Appropriations Act 2021 funded the federal government through the rest of this fiscal year and provided COVID relief, also addressed highway funding. It provided spending authority for highways through September 30th. In addition, it provided $640.7 million for additional surface transportation block grant charging infrastructure projects. Delaware will get approximately $2.7 million from this. It also provided a $1.1 billion formula-based bridge replacement rehabilitation program based on bridge condition, of which Delaware will receive $20.6 million. Additional COVID relief provided $9.8 billion to highways, nearly $42 million of it to Delaware, that can be used for surface transportation block grant programs, projects, or through a special authority, routine maintenance, salaries, operating expenses, and debt services. As in the past, FHWA will be conducting compliance assessment program reviews. These are a series of project-based questions that check compliance with the appropriate regulations. Most of this work will be done remotely, and you may have already been contacted. You can expect to see some changes in project involvement in the coming year. The FAST Act provides that, to the maximum extent practical, FHWA is to allow a state to assume the responsibilities for project design, plans, specifications, estimates, contract awards, and inspection of projects on both project-specific and programmatic basis. Our stewardship and oversight agreement between FHWA and DelDOT outlines project-specific approval actions that are delegated to DelDOT. FHWA is moving toward less involvement in project approval actions and more towards having processes in place for the state to take those actions. FHWA will be taking more of a risk-based approach, assessing the strength of program areas through project involvement. Project involvement will be focused on identifying risks, issues, etc. that relate to program improvement. Project involvement informs risk in programs, and program involvement informs risks on projects. While FHWA will not be directly involved in as many projects and project action approvals, expect us to be doing focused project reviews related to specific program areas. Again, thank you for this opportunity to address the workshop. I look forward to participating with you over the next couple of days, and I look forward to working with you through the rest of the year. If you have any questions, feel free to email them to me at the email address shown or address them to any of our staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. As Doug said, please email him with any questions you may have. This time, I'd like to welcome Sarah Esposito to discuss an overview of the NPDES program.
Good morning, DelDOT and joining friends. Thank you, John, for the introduction. Before I get started my presentation, I would be remiss in saying, what the heck? Why am I up here batting first? I know I joined DelDOT's Toastmasters Club to get better at public speaking, but leadoff batter after the secretary in a 2-day conference, I don't think I'm that good, or ever will be. So it got me thinking that maybe it's because today is my birthday and everyone's gonna sing and wish me a happy birthday. But thanks to COVID, no cupcakes. Then I thought, well, maybe they put the most important topics first. And we all know that water quality in the state of our stormwater BMPs is at the top of every transportation agency's agenda. But then reality hit, and until every drop of water gets added to our mission statement, I don't think I'm the most important one. So then it all started to sink in, and I realized it's truly just a vendetta against me by Office of Performance Management. Back in 2017, I pushed the guardrail inventory from the NPDES program to them, and I have proof on this. In 2018, they put me as the last presenter on the last day of winter workshop, and this year I'm back for the first time since then speaking, and they put me in the only worst spot, leadoff batter. So thank you for that. But as all good leadoff batters, hopefully I can get people engaged, excited, and get on base as quickly as possible, aka away from this camera. So here it goes. It all starts with a simple problem that most people either intentionally or unintentionally pollute our waters. Everything on land, whether it hits a roof, a driveway, the grass, eventually makes its way into our rivers, streams, and/or the groundwater. Here's a link to 2 videos that I know everyone will take time to search for at the end of the session. You probably won't, but you know, if you do, they're really quick, educational on how pollution affects us. So stormwater, or water quality in general, is assessed by the amount of pollutants. Pollution comes in many forms, some of which are fertilizer, or nitrogen and phosphorus, waste, both animal and human, paint, detergents, sediment, trash, and oil and grease. Nitrogen, phosphorus, and sediment are the most typical ones treated by traditional stormwater treatment practices. That's why they're highlighted in red. But the NPDES program really focuses on all aspects of pollution. So why is it important? These should hopefully be obvious, but I think a lot of people take them for granted. Our drinking water is essential for, clean water is essential for our drinking water. If you live in northern Delaware, your drinking water comes from surface water, whether that be rivers or reservoirs. And if you live downstate, your drinking water comes from groundwater. Both surface water and groundwater is easily polluted. Sometimes you don't even know that pollution is there. Animals, obviously aquatic, but also terrestrial, rely on clean drinking water, and the amount that we can consume often is dependent on the amount of clean water available. And then active and passive recreation. And Delaware's dependency on clean water. Think beyond this picture to beach tourism, restaurants on the water, riverfronts and downtowns that are focused on a waterfront. Having that clean water is vital to Delaware. So taking a step back, what is NPDES? It stands for the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System. That essentially boils down to state and federal permits that we have to abide by for clean stormwater. We're in the Division of Maintenance and Operations under Brian Urbanik, and I'm excited to introduce the rest of my team to their first winter workshop. They joined in September, Edwin Tenefos as our engineer and Amanda Reimbursement as our scientist. All three of us can be reached at npds@delaware.gov if you're ever uncertain who to contact. On the right, you can see some of the program responsibilities. I think a lot of people know some of the common ones that we work on, like the maintenance of our stormwater management ponds, environmental compliance at our maintenance yards, and our storm drain mapping. But the population-based stormwater permits, or MS4 permits, are a little different. I'm going to focus on the last three topics there: public education, outreach, staff education, and illicit discharge detection. Three parameters that we have to focus on in our permits. So first, what we don't do sediment and erosion control reviews. We don't do stormwater BMP design approvals or as-built approvals, and we don't do wetland and slipway QAS permitting. Those are all 5 different homes in DelDOT. We're starting to see a lot of drainage complaints due to either undersized systems or failing systems. We're also starting to see a lot of great looking maintenance yards. That's a shout out to all our district staff. This fall, our fall walkthroughs at our yards, the yards look the best that they have in the 4 years I've been here, and have certainly come a long way since the program initiated in 2001. But unfortunately, we're still seeing a lot of pollution, which is why I'm here. So what are we doing to help? DelDOT screens 20% of all our outfalls every year during dry weather. That means when it hasn't been raining, to see if there's any flow coming in. It could simply be groundwater, but our consultants sample the water, pre-screen it, and if it looks like it's more than groundwater, they send that sample off to a lab for further analysis. Often the culprits are either septic systems that have been hooked into our system or sump pumps that might be connected to a washing machine or a sink. Over the last 6 years, we've screened over 10,000 outfalls in Newcastle County alone, looking for pollution. We also sample all the outfalls at our maintenance yards twice a year and send those results off to a lab for further analysis to make sure our yards are doing everything. We provide a public hotline to residents to call in, 302-STOP-IT. The 2 P's stand for pollution prevention. We do know how to spell. Our consultant, KCI, will go out when we get a call and investigate, and then depending on what they find, that dictates our action. It may be placed on a watch list if we can't find what was called in. We may distribute door hangers to educate the neighborhood on what we found, or if we know specifically what's going on, we might work with the local land authority to issue a notice of violation. And here's a quick animated ad. We made that animated ad because we have a responsibility to educate the public on how to keep stormwater clean. We often participate in public events, such as stream cleanups, community days, educational events. Obviously, that all went by the wayside last year. We mostly focused on Google ads, such as the one you just saw. We educate on a variety of topics, from what to do with your used vehicle fluids, hazardous household waste, litter, car washing, lawn care, and animal waste. I'm going to focus on lawn care and animal waste for another second. So DelDOT promotes a program called Livable Lawns. It's a commercial and residential incentive program. It educates on proper fertilizer use, which is to get a soil test, and we provide that for free, and apply the fertilizer based on those results. Big box stores typically sell more than what's needed, and then homeowners double that amount because they think more is better. and that's not the case. We recommend applying in the fall because that's when the grass utilizes the fertilizer down to its roots, and healthy roots make healthy grass. If you put in the spring, you're just really promoting faster growth and you're going to be out cutting more instead of having a healthy grass span. And don't apply right before it rains. You're literally washing your money down the drain as well as a bunch of pollutants. If you complete the steps, you do get a $50 voucher for native plants. So I encourage you to check out the website and sign up if you're interested. And here's another quick animated ad. You might have seen these on Google. If you Google fertilizer this past spring, you might have seen this ad. Another thing we see a lot of is animal waste in our system. Many people ask, well, animal waste is natural, it's a natural product, but the amount of dogs that we have isn't natural. Typically, there might be 2 dogs per square mile, but on average in in urban areas, it might be 125 dogs per square mile. And that adds a lot of extra bacteria and parasites into the system. That's the bug beyond the carrying capacity. So fortunately, most people know now that they have to scoop the poop, but I think it's mostly because of the bad looks from their neighbors if they don't. And what they do is they walk down to the nearest catch basin and they dump the bags into the catch basins. So that just compounds the problem. Now we have dog waste and plastic in the system. And then when it rains, all those bags get flushed down to the nearest stream or ditch where that outfalls. Besides that, we see a little bit of everything from, unfortunately, sewage in our storm drain pipes, from illicit or illegal sump pump connections, excessive amount of cigarette butts, excessive amount of trash, greases that are dumped into our catch basins, paints, and excessive amount of sediment and or concrete washout from do-it-yourself projects that people do and then don't clean up properly. So what we're asking from you is to please call 302-STOP-IT, whether it's at your personal residence or here on the job, to call it in. It's anonymous. You can also, if you're on the job and just want to contact me or our team, please start calling it in. This kind of ties back to our permit. In our next permit, we're trying to ask DNREC not to have us do that outfall screening that I mentioned before. It's like trying to find a needle in a haystack. So instead, we're stating that DelDOT and all of its partners put a lot of boots on the ground every day. And if we find something, we'll call it in. And that will help save the department a lot of money and hopefully find more pollution than searching for that needle in the haystack. Thank you, everyone. Turn it back over.
Thank you, Sarah. First of all, happy birthday.
Thank you.
We had a couple of wishes for your birthday on the Q&A. I have one question. So for our maintenance, this is my question. For our maintenance staff, I guess you're wanting them to be your eyes in the field. If they see something, just report it with that STOP-IT phone number, or? Yeah,
I mean, our own district staff, it's a little bit different, but that's a global request for all of DelDOT, from construction inspections to anyone, public relations, adopt a highway folks, the whole gamut. If you're out and about and you see something that's not supposed to be there, call it in or email me.
Okay. And the community cleanups that you do when it's normal conditions and not a pandemic, do you ever do any within the department, like for the stream cleanups and everything else? We haven't. We usually sponsor the Christina River cleanup. We haven't done a department-focused one, but we could. I know normally around here on Earth Day, we do a campus cleanup. We don't get a ton of participation, so it'd be great to get more. Okay. All right. Let me see if there's any other Q&A come in. We have a who and how to get soil tested.
So if you search www.livablelawns.org, you can sign up. And once you sign up, we send you a free soil test kit. And then we ask you to complete the steps. And if you complete the steps, then you get the $50 native plant voucher.
That's pretty much all the questions we had. Okay, there's another one just came in. Is there an outreach to Kent and Sussex counties? I only see Newcastle County.
Our biggest permit is, our phase 1 permit is focused in, or is issued for Newcastle County. So we do spend a little bit more time there, but we have a phase 2 permit that's a portion of Kent County, and that's eventually going to get expanded down into Sussex. A lot of our ads we run statewide. So while it may be made for our Newcastle County permit, we promote it statewide. The Livable Lawns program is a statewide program. So it may have been created for Newcastle County, but we promote it statewide.
I think that's all the Q&A we've received for this one. Audience, please bear with us while we're awaiting the arrival of our next presenter. Thank you very much, Sarah.
Thank you.
So our next presenter is Missy Heck, here to present on DelDOT's training and education program.
Hey, how are you?
Good.
All of you, all 4 of my 5 of you. Thank you for having me here today. I'm very excited. I'm not a coffee drinker, but for some reason I did. So I had to print out notes this morning because just in general, I'm a type of person that when I get excited, and I'm very excited this morning, I tend to see something shiny or a squirrel and get distracted for a good 15 minutes, and that's all I really have. I also talk really fast when I get excited, so bear with me. So good morning, as I said earlier, my name is Missy Heck. I'm new to DelDOT, and I'm the manager of the training and education team. So although I'm new to DelDOT and to the state, I've been involved with training and development and organizational development for over 20 years. So in some aspects, I'm fitting in pretty comfortable and I'm happy and I'm settling in. In others, because I am new to state agencies and to the organization, I thank you all for being patient with me and helping me during this transition and in essence, training the trainer. Slide here. So, oops. Technical difficulties. Okay, so our team consists of 5 members. We have Candace Green, Janice Jordan, Art Merriweather, and Bobby Tyree Edwards. And rounding up the team is myself. Capabilities include facilitating, instructional design, project management, coaching, needs and gaps analysis, content creation, and peer review. And all of these skill sets that they possess help them with their design, development, and delivery of training content and programs throughout our organization, as well as with other organizations that we partner with throughout the state. Okay, I'm having a hard time. I'm missing a slide. Okay. So our team focuses on 8 disciplines, and we kind of break those disciplines down into 2 areas. One is career development, and the other is helping the business run as usual or improve processes within the business. In career development, we focus on employee enhancement, promotion opportunities, and being able to maneuver throughout the organization, understanding how to be good leaders and stewards and good coworkers as well. Within the more business as usual type programs, we're focusing on driver education, safety, and wellness. There we go. All right, so our programs that we are currently focusing on are CPR and first aid, which is on hold right now because in our current environment, it's a little breathy. We were able a couple weeks ago to continue small, limited, in-house CPR and first aid certifications and training. However, with the new mandate a few weeks ago where we're 100% all the time wearing masks, it's kind of hard. The mannequins don't like it. They find it really impersonal. So we had to suspend that for right now. When we do have that running, we are able to partner with the different locations throughout DelDOT, and even at times not have all of our training here at the admin building and go down to the different locations and allow that certification to happen on site. We enjoy doing that because who doesn't enjoy a field trip? And also it helps keep your staff in the field. So if we're traveling to you as opposed to you traveling to us, that's less travel time that your staff has, and that we're taking them away from the need that you need them for. Other organizations we have, and again, unfortunately, some of them are on hold, are our apprenticeship programs and some strategic mentoring. We're trying our hardest from at least not only a soft skill standpoint, but from a technical and functional standpoint to help our team members grow, not only professionally, but personally as well. And this will only help them in their career, help them be promoted, help them advance, help them become more proficient, but it also sends a strong message to everyone. It's not kumbaya. We're not trying to stand in a circle, throw a koosh ball and say, hi, my name's Missy, and everyone leave with a hug and a kiss at the end of the day. We're trying to help send a message that we're investing in. Oftentimes training is still misunderstood. Sometimes we're the last to get funded and the first to get cut, but it's a strong recruiting tool and it's an even stronger retention tool. So we try and focus our programs around that ideology, that's one of the reasons that we're here, and that's one of the main value adds that we provide. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, a lot of our courses and programs are on hold right now, just because of social distancing and the environment. I know you all are familiar because I'm sure in your disciplines and roles you're experiencing the same things. However, there are a few that we are still able to provide, and that would be our our advanced and basic defensive driver classes. We still are providing those. I encourage you to take them. They're no cost to you, and if you send your certificate in, Jake from State Farm will give you up to a 10% discount. For the basic course, we put a record in your transcript, and then 3 years, up to almost 3 years later, we'll try and remember to, we keep a running roster to remind you that, hey, your 3 years is coming up. Would you like to take the advanced defensive driver? That keeps you active, so you don't have to reset your program. So we do try and take care of that for you because it's easy to forget. Not everyone puts that on their calendar because it's not everyone's highest priority. So that's one of the services that we try and provide for you. One of the classes that we provide every Monday for our new hire orientation, and this month we have 4 independent, it's our drug and alcohol class. And I know this sounds really odd, but it's actually one of my favorite classes that we provide. I was having dinner with my sons last night. I have a 19 and a 20-year-old. And they said, Mom, what did you do today? I said, drugs and alcohol. And they said, what? I said, yeah, tomorrow I'm doing violence. After this, I'm going to go teach a violence in the workplace class. And my son, Michael, he goes, Mommy, is this like an intervention dinner? And I'm like, no. And I realized what I just said. So this morning, when I sent my good morning email out to my staff, I told them the story because I like to give them a chuckle every morning. And I like a dad joke in there or something, but I figured this one would suffice. And I said, hey guys, from moving forward, because for us, it's just one of the things that we kind of joke about. Let's make sure when we're talking that we say drug and alcohol protocol class or preventing violence in the workplace. So my children were training the trainer last night. So I don't get in trouble when I'm hanging out with people and they say, what'd you do last night? And I tell them drugs and alcohol. Another reason why I enjoy this class so much is because we focus on 2 sides of drugs and alcohol here within DelDOT, the challenges that we're having. The one side is, hey, this is the policy and this is what we expect of you. And the other is, this is the policy and these are your rights and responsibilities. And so it would appear that it would be a very policy-based, boring class. But our lead facilitator, Bobby Tyree Edwards, has done an amazing job. And taking something that should be dry and almost bureaucratic and turning it into a very fun class. I don't know how I would ever say a drug and alcohol class is fun, but it is. And it's a really interesting class. We all take it every 5 years. It's a requirement for us. And it's amazing because I sit in, I'm her backup. And sometimes when we're giving the class, we'll have a classroom full of people and we start going through the various drugs and what they do and how to notice them and what's going on. And we ask the people, okay, this is an opiate. What are the signs of someone who's on opiates? And they'll get a deer in the headlights look. And I don't think that's a bad thing. Other times, the class runs ridiculously over because the knowledge of what people know, this sign, that sign, is just overwhelming. And so every time I attend or help participate in that class, I find a lot of value at it. It's a train the trainer type class. It's amazing what you can learn sitting in on those classes. And it's really amazing the stories that we hear. And there are times where, I don't know if I should say this for job security purposes, but there are times where basically the attendees of the class are training the class because their knowledge and the way they've been impacted by the drug and alcohol pandemics and issues that we have here in Delaware have impacted their lives so much that they came into the class. You could just see their face changes. They were a little crabby at first, but when they left, they were like, okay, you guys get me, I'm not alone. So that's one of my favorite classes, but enough about me and drugs and alcohol. Other responsibilities that we have include partnering with Polytech and other educational institutions throughout Delaware. And one of the programs that we're getting ready to launch in a month is the Blue Collar Program. So I've reached out to many of you asking you to help me notify which members of your staff you want to attend the various offerings and what times, slots that you'd like. If you haven't done that yet, I'm gonna take this advantage to not send an email and ask you here, send me that information. We don't want anyone to get left out of the program or have any misscheduled people, so we don't want to impact your running of your daily life. Other programs that we're responsible for is the Educational Assistance Program. Here at DelDOT, we do have a tuition reimbursement program. You can go online onto our intranet and fill out that application and come to my office and we'll review it. If you have any questions about it, feel free to call me. Once you've been here for a year, you can sign up for that program. It's a reimbursement program, so you do have to pay your tuition first. Once you show us that the tuition has been paid and that you have a passing grade, then we work through our process. That is still an active program right now. I think a lot of people are concerned because everything is going on and they're unaware that that's still active. We also work with other divisions and departments within DelDOT and the state to partner together working on training calendars. There are times where the training that we are required to take here at DelDOT are coming from my team, and there are other times where they're state mandated. So we'd like to partner with those different agencies to make sure that one, we're not inundating you, two, there's no redundancy, and three, that you're getting the best value for your time. Our team is also responsible for the recognition program. I'm not sure if any of you saw it, but we had a fun time this year trying to figure out what to do because everything is limited. And normally we have a banquet and a ceremony to celebrate all of you. And this year, we can't even have lunch together, let alone a banquet. So we were putting our heads together, figuring out what could we do. And the suggestion came in to do yard signs. And at first I was a little hesitant because I'm retired military, so I have a little bit of that big brother thing in the back of my head. I'm like, do I want people knowing where I live? And my staff said, Missy, come on, get over it. That we're just gonna go out and put these in their yards. So we had some signs made. We used that budget that we normally would, or a portion of that budget that we normally would for the recognition dinner, and we had the signs made. And I made a few jokes like, okay, we're going to the cities, we're going to the country. These people have these strange people in their yards. Am I going to get shot? Am I going to get chased by a dog? But we only frightened about 3 spouses out of everybody. And I only had 2 "were you in my yard" emails, and it was well received. So we were really happy that we were able to pivot and be creative enough in this situation to still be able to recognize you and to thank you for everything that you've done for DelDOT, and to let you know that we appreciate what you're doing. We hope you continue to do it, and that all of your hard work is not forgotten. We are still conducting new hire orientation. We have changed the way we do it. Our normal cadence used to be every other week, and we had larger classes. But due to the changes, just like all of you had to change some of the way you do business, we have shortened our classes because of capacity room, and we've switched NEO to be every week now. And although that's challenging for our team, the value add of that is exponential, because it's helping us expedite the hiring process for all of you. So you're able to get your new hires into your field and into your training programs more rapidly than we would have been able to in the past. We're still holding them on site, so my whole team is in the office every week helping train these people. We are being very flexible with the content because, as I mentioned earlier, we had to put CPR on hold. That used to be part of it. We are keeping a running roster so that when we can bring that back, we can make sure that everyone's up to date. And we're also doing the same thing with our promotional training. So we don't want anyone's career progression to get impacted by this, and so we're being as flexible as possible. We have had a little concern and feedback that we are still training some classes in person. However, just like all of you are doing within your daily life, we're practicing social distancing. When we can use flex training, where we can do a hybrid of in-person or online, or even a WebEx or a phone call, we're trying to do that. We're trying to be as flexible as possible to keep you all up to date where you need to be, especially with those new hires and those promos that are priorities for us. And so with that, I think that's a very fast, high-level overview of what we do. And in about 10 minutes, I'll calm down.
Great. Thank you very much. There was one question that came in. I think you might have answered it, though. It was asking, where do I find more information on the courses?
So that's another one of our roles and responsibilities. We are the DelDOT administrators of the Delaware Learning Center. You can go to the intranet. You go under the Human Resources page, you'll find, it looks like a little flower. It's like a blue and yellow, almost lotus. And it's called the Delaware Learning Center. And if you're looking for a DelDOT specific course, one of the things that we try and do from a style guide standpoint is put DelDOT at the beginning of all of our training courses. So there are times where the state does have more than one class, like respect in the workforce. We have one and the state has one. And so if you're looking for a DelDOT specific one, put the DelDOT in first. However, you have access to all of those classes within the Learning Center. So you can take, and actually there are times where you will be required to take a non-DelDOT but a state course. There's also an offering in there called Cyber U, and there's literally hundreds and hundreds of topics. So when you go into the DLC, there's a little search bar up on your top right, and you can just look for if you're looking for management or time management or leadership or grammar or anything, that you can search that and see. And there are little videos, and some of them are 5 minutes long and others are 3 days. So if you have any challenges, feel free to send me an email. I'll help you learn how to navigate through it. And I'll also show you some of the tips and tricks and features.
Thank you. That's all the questions we had today. Thank you very much for presenting, Missy. And with that, we'll move on to our next presenter.
Well, thank you for your time and thank you for having me. And I hope you all have a wonderful day.
And so our next presenter is Todd Revis, who will be speaking on how COVID has affected the DTI business practices.
I'll take a Xanax.
To figure out whether or not I need my glasses, I guess I don't. So for those of you not aware, Bob Kovacs has a shot clock in here, so he holds it up to let you know you have 5 minutes left. I think I need to borrow that for some meetings. That's great. So hopefully I won't take up too much of your time here today. My name is Todd Revis. I'm the Director of Technology and Innovation, as mentioned, and wanted to share some quick thoughts on, how we responded to COVID and what that's been like for us. So, I guess I got the clicker here. So our agenda for the next couple minutes is we're going to talk about the early days to the present day in terms of the IT response, what that was like for us, what we went through and so forth. And then we're going to talk about lessons learned, and there's really some important things I think to talk about there and what things might look like in the future, for technology, and then some closing thoughts and Q&A after that. And of course, at any point in time, if you want to ask any questions, feel free to use your Zoom session for that. Let me get back to this. Sorry about that. I went too fast. Okay, one more. All right. So this is something that I found online. I thought it was interesting, and doesn't 100% apply to us, but I thought it was a good visual on what COVID, the impact of COVID on technology in general. And obviously you can see that there's a selection being made that COVID-19 was really the driver behind digital transformation of an organization or a company. In our case, I would say that was somewhat true, but we have a lot of projects that when we went into COVID, we took a look at our prioritization, and some things did change. There's no way I could say that it didn't. But at the same time, if you think about what technology does, a lot of the existing projects that we had in flight, generally when we bring technology in, it's designed to make the business more efficient, make the business able to access their applications and needs from different places, remote, that type of thing. So I think a lot of our projects already, naturally just kind of blended into that COVID response situation. And we were fortunate enough to have some things in place already that made it a little bit easier for us, despite the overload that we faced for a while there. Keep waiting. Here we go, next slide. Thank you. So I don't want to bore you too much with numbers on this, but we had to enable a remote workforce. I think some of us were able to work virtually prior to COVID. So we had a subset of employees here at DelDOT that were able to do that. But what we ended up having to do is, because of obviously the tremendous risk around being in the office and the traditional way of doing things, we had to try to respond to the governor's orders and best practices with public health, and be able to send people home and have them establish a good connection and be able to be effective with their jobs. And so it obviously changed a whole lot in our lives. We just from a VPN perspective, we turned up more. I think in the course of about a month, we turned up more than 1,000 VPN connections. DTI helped us create a COVID VPN sort of subset of users. And I don't know the current number, but it's probably around 1,500 folks that have been enabled at this point. And obviously that takes a lot of other things as well. You can't just provide someone VPN and send them on their way. So we started deploying laptops. There were supply chain problems. And so we had to figure out the best way to procure equipment and work with some lead times and things like that. Look at what we had already. What can we redeploy? Those types of things. And then there was a lot of other things that come along with that. Someone may start working from home, and then, it changes. You realize, I'd like some monitors, I need a headset, I need some of these other things. And so each one of those situations creates a new challenge, because not only do you have to have the inventory, but you have to be able to support it. And so when we got into the support side, there was a tremendous burden on the service desk. And then a lot of us were just responding to whomever, would ask for whatever. We always try to say yes and just find a way to get it done. And so hopefully we were successful in doing that. I think, some of the things, as I mentioned, that we had, some of the connectivity options we had prior were advantages, I think, in a sense. So we were a little ahead of the curve in that regard, although the means to accomplish it, can be a little clunky at times. And then, to talk about internet in specific, I think I've learned a lot, and I think a lot of our end users have as well throughout this process. But I always was one that looked at its speeds, of internet, whether it be cellular, Wi-Fi, whatever, wherever I may be. I'm, you know, I work in technology for a reason because I'm interested in that type of stuff. But I think what we found is we had to learn a lot about our connectivity requirements, and also help a lot of end users with their own challenges, because there is, just because you have internet doesn't mean that it's sufficient to do the work that you need to do and to maintain the connectivity. So like our VPN connection, for example, requires 30 megabits per second. That's upload and download speed just to stay connected. And 30, you know, not a lot of people have that in their home. So we had to work through a lot of those types of challenges, an awful lot of one-offs. At one point, we even had, I even worked with Verizon to have cell towers adjusted in Maryland, because we have some employees over in Maryland that were working off of cellular and having a hard time with it. So fortunately, you know, we have some of those relationships, and we can reach out to them with those types of things. Hardware was, as mentioned, was another ongoing challenge. We were able along the way to procure hardware and get what we needed. And then DTI came in with their own CARES Act equipment as well. It does create an asset management challenge, I would say, because you just see these things flying out the door. And if you're like me, you wonder, you know, are we able to track these things effectively? Do we know where everything is, that type of thing? And then I have policy and best practices here, because I think a lot of the different agencies out there started, not just DHR, but, you know, DTI, I know, looked at revising their telecommute policy and those types of things to make it more modern and suitable. I think it is something that needs to be revisited with an employee periodically. Is it working out for you? Those ongoing conversations always have to happen. And then folks need to, I have spent time working remote prior to my life here at DelDOT. And so I did it for a long time. And so I kind of understood the level of self-awareness needed, you know, when you're working from home. I realized early on in COVID that our VPN would cut you off after 12 hours of consecutive connectivity. I knew that because I was on for 12 straight hours and doing that quite often. And so, you know, we did what we had to do. I think that's why we have the Lego figure here, you know, to the side. I think it's, we had to just get to work, you know, and so that's what that little Lego figure is meant to represent. But you have to be conscious of your mental health, you know, make sure you're getting exercise when you're at home, make sure you're taking breaks, the types of things that you might do in the office. Like me, if you're familiar, I get up and walk around. I'm always like to go around and talk to people and that kind of thing. And I can't really do that now. So you have to find ways to sort of offset that. And I think that's for everybody. That's just for your own well-being and personal health. And so, you know, it's a balance that you have to strike. And so I think as managers, you know, you have to be aware of what your employees are doing and, you know, are they on the right track with that type of thing? And it's more than just, you know, technology. It's getting away from that screen time and that type of thing. Ongoing support, I mentioned it's ongoing to this day. It continues. It's an evolution. I think I'm always looking to, you know, where are we out of balance, like that type of thing. I think we're doing a lot of these types of events now, and I think that's probably the next place where we need to emphasize a little more focus around resources. I think we have a pretty good handle on it, but at the same time, you know, as we've grown and enabled this, you know, we're a lot of agencies don't use Zoom. DTI does some Zoom because of leg haul, but it's not really a product that they support. You know, for example, I think they know how, so it's sort of we have our own account and we're kind of out there on that one because not only of our relationship and need to work with leg haul and it being their preference, but also, you know, when you have these events and you're inviting in members of the public, it just makes it so much easier to manage, you know, with a virtual platform like this. And then I have this last bullet that I'm very happy that Nicole likes to mention this, but I call it payoff from prior efforts. And I could use a multitude of examples, but one is DMV, my DMV. You can go online prior to COVID and complete a DMV transaction. And so just having things like that enabled prior at DelDOT has been really instrumental in helping us with this. And so I know that there's a lot of agencies out there that don't have that, and because they haven't put, you know, forth the effort to get there, and, you know, there's some budgetary constraints involved with some of that sometimes and so forth. But we did have some advantages because of some things that we've done in the past online, some emphasis that we put on pushing ahead and opening up those avenues to our citizens. And so that's something that I should definitely mention. I'm going to see if I can get the clicker to work here. Here we go. I put this in. I've talked about this in other presentations that I've made. It's just a quick a quadrant that I think when you have something like COVID that comes in, it really can change your way of looking at things, and it should. You know, I think, and you know, we're
we're in the technology business, but we're also, supposed to be here to innovate. And I think that the best place that you can find innovation is in that high impact, low effort quadrant. And so there's some examples that we could bring to that one. And so when you don't have the luxury of time, and time can get you, your business case, it can get you an assigned project manager, it can get you through, the usual diligence that we put into a project. Well, we didn't really have that luxury for a lot of the things that we did. And so I know e-signature, for one thing, we have an Adobe product, an pre-existing Adobe suite of products. It was kind of already there. And so we pieced together in a couple of days, we got the 5-minute warning. We pieced together in a couple of days an e-signature rollout that really was, it was quick. It's not perfect, but all of a sudden we had to do it. And so we did it. I thought that was kind of nice. So I'm going to move along here. One of the other examples I had, around that one was, actually, I'm going to move on just so in the interest of time. So close to the end here on lessons learned, I want to mention changing mindsets. And I think that's something that we always encountered with some of our projects is you could go and talk to an end user and they would say, well, why are we changing this? We've always done it that way. And if that's your only reason for doing something, it's kind of a red flag. It kind of shows an opportunity. And so I think that folks' mindsets have had to change, because of COVID and that type of thing. We've had to think of different ways to do it. Why are you coming into the office? And we had folks coming into the office just to print things, and stuff like that. So we worked through a lot of those things, but that's that was one of the big lessons in all this is, and it's a good segue into the next one too, the digital divide. You may have read about this before, but really it's haves and have-nots, with internet and that type of thing. And it's real, there's a lot of people that do get left behind because they don't have proper connectivity and those types of things. But there's also a group of people that get left behind in what I would term as digital divide as well, but it's really more of a lack of desire to change, And so if you don't want to change and evolve with the technology, then you are going to get left behind. You're going to fall victim to the digital divide because you haven't wanted to keep up. And then I'll mention competent IT and end users. I think that the importance of competent IT is now more important than ever. And the example I'll use there, I'm going to pick on K-12 a little bit here, but my daughter's an 8-year-old. She started doing virtual school, and she was very excited to get her Chromebook. Like we went to the school and we picked up a Chromebook, and then we looked at what she was going to do with the Chromebook, and it was you got to be on Zoom on the Chromebook. You've got to use your application for the classroom, and then we're going to install the software on the Chromebook that tracks everything that you do, for the safety of the child and whatnot. Which I agree with, but you have to assess all those things and understand. It's great to roll out a bunch of devices, but are they the right devices? In her case, the Chromebook didn't have the computing power to do all those things at once. So she didn't get to see her teacher's face for the first 2 weeks of virtual learning. And so we worked on it, figured it out, and we went off, we broke the rules, would be one way to say it, and we put her on Zoom on a different device, and then everything worked fine. And I remember being in a room when their teacher said, Lola, this is the first time I've seen your face. And that was 2 weeks into school, which is disappointing, but the teachers are trying hard and whatnot, but you got to have competent end-to-end IT. You can't just go and buy hardware and roll it out. You got to understand that it'll meet your requirements and really do that analysis as well. And then end users as well. I think I've been grateful that we've had so many end users reach out and teach me things, and there's a lot of folks that are interested in technology. And I think we have a good sort of embedded culture here at DelDOT. And some of them are presenting, in the winter workshop, actually, folks like Dave Kleinat. I know Billy Sweeney's probably in here somewhere too. But people like that reach out. Jen Sinelli, I would mention her. She's given me some good tips on Zoom because she's interested and she's out there learning. So I really appreciate that. Sometimes, you're only one person, and so you might have a great interest in it, but you're always going to get more out of that collaboration with others. And then I'll talk real quick about communication and relationships. And again, this is it became even more important during COVID. When we talk about communication and relationships, really, obviously we have to have a good relationship with all the divisions of DelDOT, but we also need to have a good relationship with other agencies like DTI and now even public health. It's becoming increasingly important. But the relationships don't really end there. The relationships even cross into, more of these private sector realms. When we work with folks, government services from Verizon, different entities like that, Google, we've done a lot of work during COVID with them. And so that's been, it's been good to have those relationships because we've really been able to cultivate them to meet our needs. One example real quick there would be, we're about to have a vaccination event, and DelDOT, I think, has done a really good job in moving the cars and organizing those events due to our pre-existing, experience with NASCAR events and those types of things. And so we've been able to coordinate those events, and they're getting bigger and bigger. But there's going to be one coming up in the next week at Dover Downs, the International Speedway, and we're taking advantage of that facility space at the end of the day. But they asked me if we could come up with some way to provide Wi-Fi for 80,000 square feet in a parking lot. So the first thing I did was reach out to Verizon and say, they've got this emergency management group. That's what they're here for. We're a big customer of Verizon, and they were willing to help. Like they're going to come down and bring some equipment, and we'll be able to cover it that way without having to put extra strain on our resources and things like that. So if we didn't have that relationship, I think we'd be in a more precarious position there. So with that said, I'm probably out of time, so I will move ahead. If we have any questions, I can take those by typing out the answers after the fact, or I don't know if we have any or not, John.
There's no current questions, but
Okay.
like you said, use the Q&A if anything comes up.
Yep.
Todd will be here all day.
Yeah, and I will be here all day. That's right. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Todd. Department.
You're on mute.
So our next presenter is Jason Hastings. We are doing more in terms of innovative contracting across the department, and he has prepared some pre-recorded remarks regarding CMGC on some past and future projects.
Good morning. My name is Jason Hastings, and I am the Chief of Bridges and Structures for DelDOT. Today, I will be talking about Construction Manager General Contractor, or CMGC, which is a new contracting method being used to deliver capital projects. Here is a brief agenda of what I will be discussing. First, I will provide an overview of what CMGC is. I will then discuss some of the current and past projects that have used CMGC. And finally, I will briefly touch on some upcoming projects we have in the near future. We always start our presentations with the department's mission and vision, which is excellence in transportation. Every trip, every mode, every dollar, and everyone. This is the filter we use to make project-related decisions, and we see CMGC as an excellent tool to help us carry out this mission on some of our more complex capital projects. In general, there are three basic contracting methods for delivering capital projects. First is design, bid, build, which most people are familiar with and is used for 99% of all capital projects. With this method, DelDOT either fully designs or hires a consultant to fully design the project, including all plans, specifications, and contract documents. These contract documents are advertised and the contractor is selected based on the lowest bid. The contractor then builds the project according to the contract documents. There is no participation by the contract in the design, and there is no formal relationship between the designer and contractor. This method is the required method of procurement for most public works projects as outlined by Delaware Code. In the 1990s, DelDOT was introduced to design build. With this contracting method, DelDOT prepares a request for proposals, or RFP, that includes a concept with minimal detail, little design performed, and a set of specifications outlining what is required for the project. A design build team, led by a contractor and supported by a design consultant, is selected based on a combination of technical qualifications, proposed cost, and schedule. The selected team then works to design and construct the project in accordance with the requirements in the RFP. The relationship between the designer and contractor is such that the designer is working directly for the contractor and has no contractual relationship with DelDOT. In the 1990s, DelDOT gained legislative approval to construct 12 pilot projects using design build. In 2015, this approval was modified to give DelDOT full authority. The third and most recent contracting method is CMGC. With this method, DelDOT designs or hires a consultant to design a project to approximately 30 to 50%, then advertises an RFP to select a contractor based on qualifications. The contractor supports DelDOT and the designer to complete the design around the contractor's experience and resources, allowing for efficiency, innovation, and risk management during the pre-construction phase. The contractor submits a price to complete the construction of the project. If DelDOT agrees with the price, the construction contract is awarded to the CMGC contractor. If the price cannot be agreed upon, the contract is advertised just as a design bid build contract would be. During design, both the design consultant and contractor have a contract with DelDOT, allowing for more control and flexibility by DelDOT as the design is completed. In 2015, DelDOT gained legislative authority to complete 6 pilot projects using CMGC. And then in 2019, this approval was modified to 10 pilot projects. This slide gives a graphical representation of the timelines associated with each contracting method. Design bid build is a linear process where design, procurement, and construction are all completed in order with no overlap. With design build, because of the relationship between the contractor and designer, some elements of the project can be constructed before the design is complete. Design build is generally understood to be the fastest contracting method. With CMGC, some elements of the project can occur simultaneously, making the method generally faster than design bid build. With a good CMGC and earlier agreement on price, work packages can be broken out and advanced to construction while some of the design is wrapped up, allowing for the possibility of a faster process. If an agreement on price cannot be reached, the design will be advertised as a design bid build project, making the project duration more in line with the design bid build duration shown above. It should be noted that nationally, only a couple of CMGC projects have had to be advertised instead of awarded to the CMGC contractor. On this slide, I have highlighted the roles of the CMGC contractor during both the pre-construction phase and the construction phase. During pre-construction, the CMGC helps out with cost estimating, mitigating risks, and scheduling. They provide constructability reviews of the contract documents. They develop a subcontractor plan, including identifying DBE participation, and support with mitigating any potential issues with material procurement. The CMGC also helps with utility coordination, construction planning, input on the final design, and support with public involvement. It is very helpful to have the contractor in the room when meeting with legislators, businesses, and the general public. During construction, their role is simple: build the project. It can be built with single or multiple work packages. The fee structure gets worked out in advance. For DelDOT projects, we typically pay using bid items like we do for design bid build contracts. Some of the benefits of CMGC include fewer change orders and overruns. Typical design bid build transportation projects nationally average 10 to 30% in both cost and schedule overruns. CMGC is generally seeing on average 1 to 3% nationally, which is obviously a major savings. Efficiency in design based on input from the contractor. Opportunities for innovation. Having the person doing the building in the room when the design is being completed allows for innovative solutions to problems encountered before getting out into construction. Can advance construction for some elements of the project, obviously speeding up the delivery of the project. Can formulate a better relationship with the contractor, creating a team atmosphere. CMGC sees huge benefits just from that alone, just having a team atmosphere among all the working parties. It's the best method for the owner to maintain control. Design build has the designer working directly for the contractor, so a large portion of control over the design is out of the owner's hands, whereas CMGC, both the contractor and the designer have contractual relationships with DelDOT. And this is the best method for risk management, working as a team to identify and mitigate risks during design instead of when it happens in construction. This graph shows how risk is divided among the owner and the contractor. With design bid build, the owner takes on most of the risk. With design build, the owner shifts most of the risk to the contractor. With CMGC, the owner and contractor work together during design to mitigate much of the risk prior to construction. This leads to better cost stability and fewer change orders and overruns. Because no method is perfect, there are some challenges with CMGC. First, we at DelDOT lack established procedures. Each state does things a little differently, so we have tried to follow best practices from states with more experience on the pilot projects we've done so far. But we do not have, to date, established procedures. Along those same lines, our personnel does not have experience with CMGC, so we are learning as we carry out these pilot projects. We have learned that CMGC requires more extensive participation and coordination during the design phase. Because of the added workload during design, we see the best use of CMGC for complex projects where real cost and schedule savings can be significant and make the added effort especially worthwhile. The final challenge with CMGC is that the price is not low bid, but fair market value. This means that prices likely will not line up with historical bid data, and a CMGC best practice is to hire an independent cost estimator, or ICE, to help with discussions about the fair market price for the project. So what does the ICE do? The ICE performs a completely independent, production-based cost estimate for the project to help establish what is the fair market price. The ICE participates in all the same team meetings as the CMGC, so that the ICE has all the same info and is working on all the same assumptions as the CMGC. The ICE also prepares an independent schedule. Comparing the cost and schedule will help identify areas where potential efficiencies could be made by changing some assumptions or procedures being made by the CMGC. Also, by participating in all the same meetings as the CMGC, the ICE is able to provide additional input into innovations and managing risks. A good ICE team is generally made up of former contractors who have done the constructing, done the estimating and scheduling, and could truly be that independent third-party partner needed when working to finalize the price and schedule for a project not reliant on a low bid selection. As I mentioned before, DelDOT gained authority to use CMGC in 2015. So we have had the opportunity to complete 3 projects to date. The first CMGC project awarded was the 4th Street, Walnut Street intersection improvements, also known as the MLK Boulevard sweep. This project was an advanced traffic mitigation project for the major I-95 rehabilitation project that is just getting underway. It had complex MOT and major utility coordination, making it a good candidate for the CMGC pilot program. Mumford & Miller was the selected contractor, and the project was completed in advance of the I-95 project as required. The second awarded CMGC project was Bridge 1-227 on Paper Mill Road. The existing culvert was under 20 feet of fill, had 17,000 cars per day traveling over it, sat directly over a high-pressure gas line and under a high-voltage electric line, and is located between 2 parks with environmentally sensitive habitats and significant bike usage. The original concept was either a jack and bore operation or deep excavation with major traffic impacts, but the in-house designer, Bryce Baker, and selected CMGC, George and Lynch, came up with a solution to install a structural liner in the existing culvert and construct a new culvert for the bikes and peds under minimal fill. With reduced excavation, the utility impacts were minimal and the road closure was shortened. The project went to construction in the middle of the COVID restrictions, resulted in nearly 80% reduction in traffic. Because of the relationship, that team atmosphere built through design, we worked with George and Lynch to allow a longer road closure in exchange for much shorter contract time and approximately 10% less in project cost. This project was recently awarded an ABC Merit Award as well. The third awarded and completed CMGC project was Bridges 3-150 north and south on SR1 between Rehoboth and Dewitt. Both bridges needed complete deck replacements and other major bridge rehabilitation activities with major restrictions on when traffic could be impacted. We required both bridges to be completed in one off-season, October through April, and only one of the 5 contractors who proposed on the RFP claimed they could do it. Kiewit was selected as the contractor and was able to complete the work within the required timeframe. This first photo shows the manpower a contractor is willing to provide when they want to get a job done and meet their commitment. And the second photo shows the completed project, which was, as I said, completed on time. All 3 of these projects were successful and helped DelDOT learn more about the CMGC process. So the 4th CMGC contract that was awarded is the recently underway rehab of I-95 project, more affectionately known as the mother of all projects, or MOAP. This project obviously has major traffic challenges, but there were other significant risks, such as Amtrak coordination, that made this project a perfect candidate for using CMGC. Kiewit was the selected contractor based on qualifications and contributed during design to over $40 million in cost savings through innovations and scope adjustments. 3 early work packages were awarded. one for installing the demo shields under the viaduct, including over Amtrak, one for reconstructing the southbound shoulder to allow for traffic on day one of construction, as well as the crossovers for contraflow operations, and the third package for procuring long lead items like bridge joints and bearings, as well as nearly 6 miles of traffic barrier. In addition to the innovation cost savings, Kiewit's participation in design made the Amtrak coordination go smoothly, allowing for the early work package of the demo shields and getting the always challenging Amtrak coordination off the critical path, which was probably the biggest benefit to the project. As a result, the project is just getting underway with a high degree of confidence that we will beat the 2-year time frame for reduced capacity on I-95. The other currently ongoing CMGC projects are not capital projects, but are much needed documentation. The first document, the project delivery selection process, was recently adopted and added to the Design Resource Center website for use. It outlines the process for deciding which of the 3 contracting methods should be used for a capital project and includes the necessary requests for approval. The other document is the procedures for CMGC, which are currently being finalized and should be adopted this spring. We do have a couple of CMGC projects in the early stages at this time. The first is the I-95 and SR 896 interchange project. This project involves the reconfiguration of the interchange at 896 and 95 to incorporate flyovers, which will increase capacity, reduce congestion, and increase safety. In addition to the complex MOT, the project has poor soils, major wetland impacts, bridge rehabilitations, and railroad coordination. In addition, the project received an infra grant that has time requirements for when construction must begin to avoid losing the funding. Submittals from proposing contractors were due last week and are in process for awarding the CMGC. The next CMGC project coming up is the North Millsborough Bypass project. Most new alignment projects do not rise to the level of complexity that would benefit from using CMGC, but this project has some very unique challenges that would see major benefits from having a contractor involved during design. In addition to railroad coordination, there are 2 major bridges that are to be constructed in the most environmentally sensitive area in the state. Also, there is over 300,000 cubic yards of borrow needed for the project. These challenges are better resolved during design than left to chance with a low bid contract. So CMGC was selected for the project delivery. The RFP will be advertised by the end of March to get a contractor on board this spring. So I apologize that I'm not there in person to answer questions. However, feel free to follow up with me by email and I will answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Jason. Again, if there's any questions for him, please email him directly. Moving on to our next presenters. Are Dan Taylor and Jesus Reyes. Obviously with the pandemic, it's altered the way we do our public involvement process a little bit. So they're here to present on how we're conducting this process and some instructions that have been developed to help with that.
Thank you, John. Good morning. My name is Dan Taylor. I'm here off camera with Jesus Reyes. We're here to talk about virtual public workshops. John mentioned this past year with COVID restrictions, we haven't really been able to hold our public workshops the way we usually do. So we have to kind of find a new way of doing business. We want to keep our new format somewhat familiar, but still be able to convey all the information that we want from a standard public workshop. Jesus put together a presentation using PowerPoint tools. And presented that online using WebEx, could be presented using any other format. That presentation got a lot of positive feedback. We decided that was kind of our standard. So the presentation that we're about to show, Jesus is going to talk a little bit more about his presentation, some background information, and also some of the trainings that we put together. So with that said, on video.
In the previous year, the global coronavirus pandemic and subsequent federal and state stay-at-home orders brought about a need for the department to shift from the traditional in-person public workshops it had always used in the past towards safer, socially distant methods of communication with the public to inform them of ongoing and upcoming projects statewide, for at least the foreseeable future. To meet this need, virtual public workshops were selected to be used exclusively. It has since become evident that even after the public is once again able to congregate in person safely, the virtual public workshop format will remain in use, at the very least in a supplemental role to traditional workshops. The format of a virtual workshop closely resembles that of a traditional workshop, albeit held online with remote participants. A live meeting with the public is hosted via teleconferencing software. Over time, after evaluating several different programs, DelDOT has chosen Zoom as a standard platform for this purpose. During the course of the meeting, a multimedia presentation designed to deliver pertinent project information is shown to the public. Following the presentation, a question and answer session is held for those in attendance. After the virtual workshop is held, the presentation video is made available to view streaming online for those unable to attend. This video is uploaded to DelDOT's YouTube account, and a link to it is posted on the official project website. It should be noted that while DelDOT has experimented with individual elements of a virtual workshop in the past, this past year marks the first time all these elements were used altogether as a standard. Despite the unfortunate circumstances that led to its adoption, the virtual workshop standard offers several benefits. As previously mentioned, it's a safe and socially distant way a member of the public can communicate with DelDOT and stay informed of projects remotely. A virtual workshop allows for a dynamic and detailed multimedia presentation, conveying far more information than a static poster board ever could. It allows for the public to attend at their own convenience, whether a person chooses to attend the live session in real time or simply view the streaming presentation afterwards. They are given the resources to both receive updates and submit feedback for projects according to their own schedule from the comfort of their own home. The format allows for easier and thus greater access of project information to the public. More people are now able to view and share this information than before when solely using the traditional workshop format. In adopting this virtual workshop format, it became clear that a process or virtual workshop instruction should be developed in order to enable DelDOT designers to produce high-quality virtual workshop multimedia presentations. This instruction would need to fulfill the following requirements. The virtual workshop instruction should result in a presentation that is standardized in both style and procedure, while accommodating the complexity of scope and scale of each project. The instruction should be streamlined, simple in sequence. It should also be modular to easily allow for the addition or revision of information in the future. The entire process should be cost-effective, allowing the department to create virtual public workshop presentations entirely in-house, preferably by utilizing tools already at our disposal. It must be time efficient and shouldn't require a significant amount of time to create a virtual workshop presentation, especially relative to traditional workshop presentations. The instruction should be presented logically. It should be easily understood and reproduced. It should also allow the designer to incorporate their own knowledge and expertise with other audio-visual creation software to improve the quality of the presentation. The instruction shouldn't require any prohibitive access to advanced computer hardware. It should be compatible with a broad range of readily available computer hardware configurations. Taking into account the state of affairs, it should also be possible to create a presentation while working remotely from home. After a thorough evaluation involving designers from project development, the virtual workshop instruction was further refined and ultimately approved for use. You can now find the virtual workshop instruction in the Design Resource Center under the section Project Management. In Project Management, under the Guidelines tab, simply scroll down to the very bottom of the page, and there you will find the link to the virtual workshop instruction. The virtual workshop instruction consists of a 2-page PDF file, the layout of which is simple and easy to use. On the first page, you'll find 4 separate and numbered training modules located next to their respective titles, which detail their contents. The training modules available include creating a construction sequence display, creating and importing screen recordings, narrating PowerPoint presentations, and exporting presentations to video. Simply click on the training module of your choice, and you're led to the YouTube page for the corresponding training module video, hosted under DelDOT's YouTube account. The second page of the PDF file provides a list of required software featured in the training modules that should already be installed on your workstation. It also provides a link to download the one piece of software that is not, Open Broadcaster Software OBS Studio. This virtual workshop instruction utilizes 5 different programs in the process of creating presentations. Most of these programs are already installed on workstations and should at least be somewhat familiar to designers. All of these programs are free to access. Microsoft PowerPoint serves as a primary presentation creation and composition tool, used to create, import, arrange, and automate informative exhibits, provide narration to the presentation, and enable the presentation to be exported to a video file. Bentley MicroStation is of course our primary software suite for project design and project modeling, and is used to create exhibits much in the same way a designer would create poster boards for a traditional public workshop. Open Broadcaster Software OBS Studio is a free and open source screen recording program used to capture video from your desktop and individual applications that can then be imported into your PowerPoint presentation for exhibits. A link is provided to the virtual workshop instruction PDF to download the program. Microsoft Paint and the Windows snipping tool are used as basic photo editing tools to supplement those already found in Microsoft PowerPoint, and are used to capture, edit, and save static images. It should be noted that this instruction allows for individual elements to be substituted, should a designer have experience with or access to more advanced creation software. Featured in the virtual workshop instruction are exhibit creation tutorials, which cover different techniques a designer may use to produce detailed animated exhibits illustrating a project's many features. One such exhibit is that of the panning aerial, which utilizes MicroStation design files and orthogonal aerial photography to display the entirety of proposed construction within a project's limits, regardless of scope and scale. Another tutorial featured in the virtual workshop instruction is that of the construction sequence display. This exhibit allows a designer to create a site-specific, step-by-step visual timeline of a project's construction phasing from start to finish. Thank you very much for watching this presentation on the newly released virtual workshop instruction. We have every confidence this instruction is something to offer to every designer, and we look forward to witnessing the exciting and dynamic ways it will be put to use, as well as improved by designer input. The question and answer segment of our presentation will begin momentarily.
All right, I'm Jesus Reyes with Project Development North. I helped develop this training for the virtual workshop instruction. Right now, I suppose if anyone has any questions, I'd like to answer them. Do we have any questions?
Not at the moment.
Nothing yet? That's fine. Are we on time? 2 minutes?
We got 2 minutes. So, is there anything else you want to tell us about developing this?
There was a quick note. We're looking into further accommodations for the hearing impaired. As of right now, YouTube auto-generates the closed captioning for our presentations. But I think it'd be worthwhile to, say, come up with supplemental instruction on how to do it in PowerPoint itself, or perhaps using a third-party program once you have the video exported. So, yeah, just something to look out for in the future. Any other questions?
Are you planning to have guidance for live presentation / Q&A in addition to the videos?
I think it's something we can look forward or look into rather. Just thinking about it right now, I think there's a lot of important information we can probably come up with. Yeah, and it'd be nice to see that virtual workshop instruction portion of the project management section grow with supplemental information, something people can use.
One last one, does DelDOT allow other presentation tools like Prezi in lieu of PowerPoint?
So as far as the virtual workshop instruction goes, PowerPoint is the primary means to compose our presentations and export to video. However, the whole process is relatively modular, so that if you do have experience with something, better creation software, you can use that in lieu of, say, PowerPoint. But primarily, this instruction deals with PowerPoint. Yeah. So yes and no. Depends. How good are you at it? And if you can use it effectively, then you can definitely use it in place of that.
We have a few more that came in, but I'm going to ask you guys to stick around and answer those, through the chat.
Sure thing.
But to keep things on pace, we're going to move on to the next presenters. So thank you guys. Thank you, Dan and Jesus.
Yeah. Again, designers, give it a gander. I think you'll find it worthwhile. I look forward to seeing what everyone comes up with using this instruction. Thanks.
Stick around. So next we're going to have a presentation from Art Jenkins and Christine Levely regarding federal mandates and procedures for project closeout.
Good morning, everyone, all my DelDOT peeps. Unfortunately, I am unable to give this presentation in person, but I'm hoping Christine is currently showing a hologram of my face and maybe Michael B. Jordan's body to represent how I would look if I were before you in my absence. So, but seriously, if there are any questions or comments related to the information we will present that I can cover or I can answer, I would welcome your emails and phone calls after today's session. So our 15 minutes of fame will be spent discussing the department's closeout process. And this is relative to projects that receive federal participating funds. So if FHWA contributes funding to your project, these guidelines are applicable to those projects. So to kind of put this topic into context, let me very briefly explain some of the background as to why we're talking about project closeout in the process, and also why it's important to all of our project managers, all of their fiscal staff, to the finance division, and also to audit. So federal regulation, and specifically Title II, Part 200.344, that particular section of federal code governs the steps that DelDOT has to take in order to close a project that receives federal funding. Now, this past fall, this regulation was updated. And as part of that update, there was language that more clearly defined the time frame for when we must now close projects. And that time frame is 120 calendar days after the end date of the performance period. So that's how long we have in order to close projects moving forward. And by closing of projects, what we mean is that all of the work needs to be completed on the project, all of the funding needs to be removed, and then all of the paperwork necessary to be in compliance with the contractual agreements with FHWA has to be submitted or turned into FHWA for their review. So this new 120-day time frame, it applies to projects whose funding is obligated, meaning there's new funding added to a project or it's a new project, on or after November 12th, 2020. And this is kind of a big deal, so I'm going to say it again. DelDOT has up to 120 days after the end date of the performance period or the period of performance to close the project. And we're going to discuss a little more about that end date concept in a moment because it's an important driver in our timeline for complying with this guidance. So now, closeout regulations still do allow us to request an extension to end dates, but end dates extensions are going to be seen as the exception rather than the rule after that 120-day period. So it's really, really important that we work together to now understand and stay vigilant of our project end dates. Okay, let me go to the next slide. Those are the updated rules. Now let's talk current workflow. Now this slide, the two charts that we use to guide our fiscal life cycle of a federally participating project. And these two charts were taken from FHWA's Obligation Funds Management Guide. Now, the chart on the left relates to consulting or preliminary engineering services, and the chart on the right relates to construction services. That top line in both of those charts identify the period of performance, or the POP, which is the time under which we can incur project-related expenses. So on the PE chart, the chart on the left, the POP includes time for contractors to do their work as well as to wrap up any final payments and for us to bill FHWA. The POP timeline on the construction chart on the right-hand side includes time for advertisement and award, for the notice to proceed and actual construction work, and then again, making final payments and submitting those payments to FHWA. Those two green highlighted areas further down the page on that chart, both of those identify the beginning and end points for the period of performance. So that first green box starts the time frame for incurring costs, and the second box is the last day that we can pay invoices. The remainder of that time, on the right of those two green boxes, beyond the performance period, is time set aside to allow finance and audit to do our magic and really close out the project and do our work and submit the necessary paperwork to FHWA in order to get that done. And Christine will talk about what our process is in a moment when I turn the presentation over to her. So a huge piece of this project closeout puzzle that we need to get right is a mutual understanding of the second of those two green boxes from our chart, the project end date. Again, our new clock is 120 days to close a project, and that 120 days will be based on this end date. So what's a project end date mean? Let's first start out by identifying what it is not. So a project end date is not the first day to begin paying invoices on a project. It is also not like the expiration date on our milk. So where it's best to finish before that date, but if nobody's looking and it passes the sniff test, you can go ahead and finish it off. An end date is the last date that work can get done on the project. It's the last date that costs can be incurred. So for example, if the project end date for preliminary engineering is February 11th, let's say, all PE related work has to be completed by February 11th, and the remaining funding not associated with any invoices for work done by February 11th has to be removed or should be removed. If project managers can identify that work related to PE won't be done by this date, there really needs to be a conversation with finance to help develop a timeline so we can extend the end date and ensure we're in compliance with this new federal regulation. So keeping that concept in mind, when we're first allotting funding, project managers give us a project completion end date. And it's super important that any changes to that end date are communicated as soon as possible so that we can adjust our timeframes and have enough time to comply with the new project closeout regulations. So currently, finance has taken the lead on ensuring the department is in a good position to comply with this new 120-day rule. But As our project list grows for obligations after November 12, 2020, we're going to rely more and more on good communication and support from all of our partners in the field to make sure that the proper end dates and information we need is available to us for project closeout. So some of the things that we're currently doing to make sure our rear end is covered, so to speak, includes reaching out to project managers 3 to 6 months prior to upcoming end dates to ensure we're still on schedule to meet those timeframes. We're also leading the coordination with FHWA to extend end dates when we can identify that they're needed. And then we're also looking to update the way that we do business in our workflows so that end dates become more of an integral part of what we're observing during our project completion or as we move through projects. So, and that includes either including them as components in things that we're already doing or perhaps using systems like FACS or P6 or Primavera to better help track end dates and make everyone aware of their importance and impact. Because ultimately, you know, we want to be able to use all the funding resources that we can on projects, and we don't want any of those dollars to be taken away from us. So with that, I will turn it over to Christine to talk us through what goes into project closeout from the finance and audit side.
Okay, so there should be 4 slides left, I think. Okay, so good morning, everybody. And I want to thank Michael for all that great information. And I got to thinking about it. If he's Michael B. Jordan, that makes me Lori Harvey. So my dad is well off, really funny. I just turned 24. I just spent a vacation in St. Bart's and missed all this snow and ice. So I guess that's a pretty good trade-off. In closing out a project, the thing to remember is it used to take us probably close to 3 years to close a project. And then Federal Highway said, that's not good enough. Let's go to a year. And then nationally, they said, that's not good enough. We're going to go to 120 days. So one of the things currently that most of my project managers do is when they get ready to pay that final consultant or construction payment, they send us a notification so we know that we can start to get ready for our audit review. That's really important because if that end date is the last day you can do work, chances are we're not going to get a final invoice for another 30 to 45 days. So now my 120 days has shrunk by 45 days. And in that time, finance has to go into each and every item that we, and vendor that we paid, entity that we paid, take all the extra funds off, and audit has to review all of those expenditures and make sure they're compliant with state guidelines, federal guidelines, terms of agreements, terms of contracts, terms of purchase orders, and close them out. And unfortunately, sometimes there are findings where we might owe a little or somebody might owe us a little, and we have to resolve those as well before we have a final number that we can put on our final voucher and close all the way from fax to FSM to FEMAS. So there are generally 7 recognized steps to closing a project. So one is the receipt of all of your deliverables. Second is confirmation that it's complete. So we're requesting that your final invoice is noted as final, that the final estimate is noted as final. We've accepted it into inventory, and we've have releases from all of our contractors, subcontractors, consultants, and everything is good to go. Then everything gets reviewed. All of our resources are freed up, so you all can start another project. And then we're going to get busy in finance and audit, even though we've been busy all along, trust me, doing all those pre-awards, to conduct our review, get the project all buttoned up and archived, and then have a big celebration. So the next slide. So this is what finance does. This is called a PR20. This is what the Federal Highway requires. So basically, there's a definition that tells you what Federal Highway wants. It's a full accounting of everyone who was paid and what type of funding they paid to this project. So they put all the amounts of money in all the little program codes and all the types. And that's what gets signed by Laney and sent over to Federal Highway for concurrence and signature. And the project is considered officially closed. But all of that takes time. And I know we're working on a project closeout process, but in the meantime, this is what we have to do. So while finance is doing that, next slide, please. Audit is reviewing some more, making sure that we are compliant with everything and that there aren't any other items that we need to do. But that means we're going to review every consultant. We're reviewing direct labor, we're reviewing overhead, we're reviewing the fixed fee, that we meet the terms of the notice to proceed. And that we actually received what we were supposed to receive, that all the work was done during the performance period. If work's done not during the performance period, and we've had that happen, then we have to reimburse the feds for any participation that we took and use state dollars. So it can be time consuming. And the next slide is the example I wanted to show you of a little project that we called SR1 Thompsonville Grade Separated Intersection. And this project was only a little over $23 million. We paid over 300 entities, which we review and tell you what phase it is, if it was a title, connected to an agreement and a task, or if it was a direct claim, if it was a utility agreement, if it was a construction project, what type of funding we used, if we used toll credits, if the sponsor put any money into the project. So each one of those 300 lines gets reviewed to some level, whether it's a risk assessment, a memo, or a report. And at the end of all of this, we came up with, there were 6 findings. And so those findings have to also be resolved before finance can completely close the project. So I think you all can see why it takes a lot of time to finish it up. So while you all are celebrating and relieved because it's built, we're just starting to cringe because we have to get through all the paperwork and tie it all up with a little bow. But I think that everybody really works well together, has good communication about when a project is done. And, we're working with finance more closely than we ever have. And I've been around a long time, so I can say that, to close these out. We had a backlog of 562 projects. We're down to just under 300 projects. I anticipate us having those closed by the end of this fiscal year. But then Laney tells me I get to look forward to closing about 200 projects a year from here out. And I can believe it because we used to have a little break at Christmas. And I don't think even with COVID, we've had any break at all from the pre-award process. So we must be pumping the work out. So go team. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to Art or myself. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine and Art. We don't have any live questions, but as she said, we can reach out to her directly.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Christine.
Oh, gonna do this or I won't be able to go anywhere.
So at this time, it's 9:48. We're going to take a break until 10 a.m. and we'll resume our program. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. Hopefully you all got refueled for the second half of day one. At this time, Paul Moser will be discussing bicycle mobility and how to prioritize or justify improvements to make an improved bicycle network.
All right, thank you. Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Paul Moser from the Planning Division in Jeff's section, Local Systems Improvement, where we manage bike ped program, transportation alternatives, park program, on your favorite bike ped projects. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about some of the work that we've been doing to sort of frame and think about and evaluate the value of projects as far as how they relate to mobility for people bicycling around the state. So we got a lot to get into, so I'm just going to sort of go for it. First, we give you a brief intro to the sort of measure that underlies all of this called level of traffic stress. We're going to talk a little about some concepts about bicycle mobility and network connectivity. Then we're going to talk about the actual model that we've been using, the tools we use, and how that relates to our 2020 program in Newcastle County. And then I'm going to waste your time at the end with a little problem. So level of traffic stress. You guys have probably all heard of level of service, right? So it's sort of a performance measure or a measure of suitability for traffic. In a way, level of traffic stress is kind of similar. We evaluate linear segments of roadway and intersections and give them a rank where sort of LOS is A is good, F is bad. Level of traffic stress, or LTS, 1 is good, 4 is bad. We take a lot of different data points that go into coming up with these level of traffic stress designations. We take travel speeds, number of lanes, presence of shoulders, parking, traffic volume, functional class, a lot of other things. And we use those points to sort of determine how stressful it might be to ride a bicycle on that road based on your proximity to or the volume and intensity of traffic. But one of the cool things about level of traffic stress is it's not just, LTS 1 good, LTS 4 bad. Because bicycle mobility is, it's a little weird because people have different tolerances for traffic stress, right? Like some people can handle really stressful situations, others only, bike in their subdivision. So we also relate these 4 levels to sort of archetypal riders, right? So level of traffic stress 1, you kind of think of as a 12-year-old riding unaccompanied or children under 12 riding accompanied with an adult. Think of like Stranger Things, kids riding around town. LTS 2 is people who are doing it functionally, right? Like maybe they're not exactly enthusiastic about bicycling, but it's the easiest and sort of a no-brainer. I think people biking around the city of Newark to get to class. LTS 3 is people who are willing to kind of go out and get it. They're a little more enthusiastic. Imagine if someone told you like, oh, I bike from here to there, and your first reaction is like, holy crap, you did that? That's probably a good indication that they're an LTS 3 rider. And LTS 4 is your spandex warriors, people who will bike anywhere, and they don't really care about our projects. We're not going to worry about that too much. So let's see what this looks like in the real world. So here are level of traffic stress values plotted for an area around Harrington. LTS 1 is shown in dark green, 2 light green, orange is 3, and red is 4. So pretty quickly learn some things about the study area. So let's zoom in real quick. So right off the bat, we can assume that most of those level of traffic stress 1 roadways are your residential roads, your local roads with high access, maybe some commercial roads, little through traffic, low traffic speeds. And you don't really need a bike lane on those kind of roads, right? But we can also look and see a couple things about how the area is connected, right? If you want to get across town, you're going to have to use level of traffic stress 3 or 2 roadways to get between these areas. Or leaving town, LTS 4, because there's probably high speed, high volume rural roads, 2 lanes, but no shoulders, right? So you guys have probably heard of the adage of the mother who says that she won't let her kids leave the subdivision, like they can bike around the subdivision, but she doesn't want them going off on the roads because it's not safe. We can sort of reframe that in the context of level of traffic stress and say that she won't let her kids leave because she doesn't perceive it as safe. And she doesn't, it seems like something that's too stressful and she doesn't want her kid doing that. So let's play a little experiment where we remove every single road from the road network that is higher stress and look at just the roads that that kid is able to ride on. And we can notice some pretty interesting things right off the bat, right? So these little circles that I just drew show little clusters, roads that are full of, low stress, low volume roads that are plenty fun to bike on, but they're completely disconnected from each other by high stress roads. So if you want to get from there to there, you have to do something that your mom doesn't want you to do, essentially. So one of the ways we look at this a little bit easier is we give each of those little clusters its own name and identifier, and we give it a color. and we call these disconnected subnetworks or low stress islands. And the thought is if you're on, say, that blue island over there, you're unable to get over to that pink one without doing some kind of high stress maneuver. So really what this highlights is that the network and the world is kind of fragmented for you if you have a low tolerance for traffic stress. So let's do another thing where we drop in the LTS2 roads, say you're more competent, more experienced, and a little bit more able to deal with crazy traffic cycling conditions, and change how those islands look. Well, now your mobility is increased, right? Now you can get around much more effectively through the area, but there are still barriers that remain higher stress. So the real key takeaway here is your mobility on a bicycle is directly related to your tolerance for traffic stress and how well connected your area is with low stress roads, pathways, or other facilities. So just a couple key things, kind of axioms that we're going to use to talk about this metric. What's the problem? How are we framing the problem of bicycle mobility? It's that households within bikeable distances to common destinations are unable to reach them on low stress streets, pathways, or intersections. And when people can't envision themselves riding somewhere in a not stress-free, but a less stressful routes, that's suppressed, that they don't even consider doing that trip, right? So bicycle mobility is suppressed because people do not feel comfortable riding to their destination. They can't envision themselves doing it, so they say, I'm not going to do that, I'll just take a car. And what's the solution? Obviously, we create new connections using pathways, other small little connectors, or we improve the riding experience in existing roads with roadway projects and find ways to make it less stressful to bike on arterial, collector, whatever roads. So let's look at an example, and well, no, not just yet. So, well, good thing that our bike plan from 2018 told us to do exactly this, right? So the blueprint for bicycle-friendly Delaware, goal number 1.1 is increase the number of homes and destinations connected entirely by the low-stress bicycle network. So we know where the homes are, right, from county data. And the bike plan told us what the destinations are, right? Public transportation, employment centers, schools, community centers, and parks and trails. We can put all those on a map and basically model how well connected people's houses are to things that they might want to go to. So let's look at an example real quick. So say your house is over there in Brookside and you want to get over there to Gore Hall in UT. What is the quickest way to get there, right? If you don't care what the level traffic stress is. Well, the fastest route is 2.5 miles, perfectly bikeable route, about 12 minutes. However, if you look at what you actually have to do to take that route, you start off beautifully going through a park, go across a low stress street, then you get on Marrows Road, which is pretty fast, and the turn lanes there, you kind of have to share it with a high volume of traffic and high speeds, called level traffic stress 4. So we consider this an LTS 4 route, and really only acceptable for people who are willing to go out there and get it. So how about level traffic stress 1? Say you didn't want to go on any of that, you only wanted to get from Brookside over there on LTS 1 roads. Trick question, you can't do it. There's no way to get there. You have to go through some sort of high stress maneuver to get from there to there. How about LTS 2? Well, you can do it, but it's kind of ridiculous. You have to go down to Route 4 and then go back up 896 and then, go through the IV parking lot. And that took a 2.5 mile trip and just made it a 4.2 mile trip, which is adding 70% detour. So you took a 12-minute bike ride and made it into a 20-minute bike ride. Not really feasible, right? So the model uses a couple of different, it's kind of a decay function that looks at what is the shortest possible route and then what is the detour associated with that level of traffic stress. I don't really want to go into that too much. I don't have time. Just trust me. We're ranking that trip pair as about 0.4. You can see it. Block it there. So then we also do the same thing, right? So we get a score for the level of traffic stress 2 route, and then we do the same thing with level of traffic stress 3, which is a little bit quicker. And that gives it about a 0.49 score for that pair. And then we look at how they all fit together. We rate each of those, the score for level 1, 2, and 3, and come with a weighted score that says this trip pair from this house to here is, worth 0.5 points out of a total of 2.25. So this is essentially 1/5 as connected as it could be using our model. And so we look at it. So let's look at this on a larger scale. So here's an area in Bethany, and those little red lines represent some pathways that we're going to fill in the gaps. Some developers lovingly left us some holes in the pathway network. And the stars represent all the places we're going to go to, and the dots represent all the people's houses. So we're just going to focus on one of them, right? That little purple star right there represents a school. So this visualization shows which houses have connectivity at which levels. So the green dots represent houses that have connectivity level traffic stress 2. You know, they can get there totally on LTS2 roads or intersections. Orange is 3 and red is 4. So let's build that pathway, plug in our model and rerun it and see how it changes conditions. Bet you didn't notice that, but a couple of houses changed. The situation of connectivity changed. So we highlight the houses which had an improvement in bicycle mobility and at what level. And we can really get this fascinating picture of how the projects improve bicycle mobility, not just for your hardcore riders, but also for your average person and even kids. So it doesn't just generate a map, it generates a lot of data. Again, boring. Everyone just wants to see a chart. So we even made you a chart. Ranked projects. So for 2020 Newcastle County, we took 7 projects from WMAPCO, ran them through the model, did mobility and analytics on them. And then we also did sort of a feasibility, programmatic. How do these projects fit into our program and are they a good fit? The slide's a little out of whack here, but one more example just for fun. These are 2 of the projects we evaluated. Augustine Cutoff, which would connect the Blue Ball Barn property down to the 40 acres neighborhood across the Brandywine. And on the right side is this kind of crazy path that would connect Tally Yard over to Concord or Boehner Boulevard. It's not going to happen, but it's still an interesting concept, right? So 2 projects that are basically right next to each other across from 95. Traditional prioritization spatial analysis, we just draw a circle around it and see, oh, how many schools are in a 3-mile radius? How many people live here? Blah, 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 which is kind of a boneheaded way to look at a problem like this. So using the model that I just described and the analytics I described, we can get a very, very different picture of the value that these projects play in connecting new houses to destinations. So this is looking at households to employment centers. Like I said, dark green is LTS1 improvements, green is 2, and orange is 3. So you can see Augustine Cutoff, huge LTS1 improvements through the west side, Trolley Square, Alapocus, LTS2 connectivity improvements all the way down to Southbridge somehow, right? Maybe they're not significant, but somehow that connects people in Southbridge to a job. And then LTS3 all the way up into Fairfax. And the other one's kind of different, right? Just LTS2 improvements, which means you kind of have to do something somewhat stressful to get to that trail. Just like I said, we did all these projects. We sort of ranked them, came up with a way to describe them, and we get back to WMAPCO. So number 1, we're going to move on. I don't have much time to talk about it, but Augustine Cutoff, we're moving this one forward. This is the project we just looked at. Fantastic project, great connector from the county into the city. Apparently, it's supposed to be kind of contentious, so we're going to be doing a public workshop to finalize the concepts that have been developed in the last couple of years, move it forward. Projects 2 and 4, or 2 and 3 in our ranking just didn't really make much sense. It didn't fit with our program or really in any sort of DelDOT project delivery mechanism. So we kind of pushed those to the side, and we're pushing number 4 up, which is School Lane Trail, connecting School Lane to the shopping center over by Harris Corner and down to the 273 paths. Really doing a great job in that area. We love that project. So what does this mean? What's the point of all this? Well, level of traffic stress and this kind of modeling and this way of looking at mobility gives us a meaningful narrative and quantitative way to approach bicycle projects and mobility and how our projects can influence that at an institutional level that we can pretty quickly communicate with the public and then also make as complicated as we want internally, as any good DOT metric should. It allows us to compare the value of projects directly, apples to apples. It creates a meaningful process for managing public and legislative requests, which I'm sure Anthony, Jeff, Nicole, and CR are going to be very happy that we have that. It's a great tool for assisting local planning. What we're not doing, just some, full disclosure, we're not developing a statewide bike plan. We're not using this tool to plan projects. Our bike plan is leaning very heavily on the MPOs and the localities to do the planning. We just prioritize and manage the projects. We're not doing pedestrian travel. That's coming next year. Bernie's doing a lot of work on the sidewalk network we hope to leverage. And we're not prioritizing projects based on their access to Wawa. As much as some people might want us to do that, it's kind of a joke that I use the path to the request we have for people that want pathway to Wawa. And that kind of got me thinking, the idea of a pathway to connect people to the Wawa. Where in Delaware can you actually do that? Where is it actually feasible to bike to Wawa? So whenever I'm doing a little tweak to the model or trying something else out with the model, I tend to like to have a little bit of fun, right? Model some scenarios and see what's going on, learn something new. So I was making a tweak to the model. I decided that I would do exactly this. We would look at which households in Newcastle County have the best access to Wawa. So I went and plotted all the Wawas with little pink dots all around the state. And I ran the model in the existing conditions. And what's it look like? Well, all these little green dots are places that have level of traffic stress 2 connectivity to Wawa. And the best, if you want to have the best access to Wawa by bike in the entire state, go buy a house in Claymont, because it got the Philly Pike Wawa and one on Navens Road, very easy access. But something I noticed when I was developing this ridiculous image, there are 7 Wawas in a 3-mile radius, but right across I-95, none of those households have any access. They can't get to any of them. So this kind of gets at an interesting measure that I want to sort of build in the future, is looking at unrealized potential. So places where there's a lot of potential, right? People live within very bikeable distances to places, but they can't reach it on the existing network. So I've sort of plotted out this, I'm calling unrealized potential or unrealized propensity. Red shows houses which have a lot of potential connectivity, right? They're within 3 miles of 7 of these different destinations, but there's no way to reach them on low stress facilities. Whereas blue means they either have realized that potential or there's just no potential at all. I haven't found a way to normalize it. But I then realized that I'd spent 2 hours making maps about biking to Wawa, and I actually had a job to do, so I had to stop. And I'm going to leave you guys with that. If you have any questions about this, please reach out. We're having a lot of fun building this tool. If you support any of your projects or any of your studies, please don't hesitate to email me. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Right now, we don't have any questions, but I'll ask you to stick around maybe for a minute in case anything comes in. So with that, we're going to move on. Being along the coast, Delaware is susceptible to some major storm events, and Dwayne Day is here to discuss our plans for emergency response and debris management should one of those events occur.
Good morning, everybody. Like I said, I am DelDOT's Homeland Security and Emergency Manager Planner. I'm based out of the TMC. Most of you probably don't know how to use it. There we go. What the TMC is. And here's a pic. Transportation, the TMC is basically a 24-hour statewide operation. It's a command and control facility. It coordinates and manages DelDOT's response to any incident that impacts Delaware's transportation system. On a day-to-day basis, it is basically what happens on our highway systems. But as it escalates into a large-scale event, then we escalate how our approach is going to be. But on day-to-day, it monitors and controls all the ITMS intelligent transportation systems. Those are the traffic signals, the variable message signs, traffic cameras, vehicle counting devices, and weather stations, et cetera, those types of things. We also do incident emergency management planning and operations, and the Homeland Security planning operations is handled there also. This is actually a picture of the TMC. As you can see, we have a lot of IT technology coming in here, a lot of videos. The technicians in the front row, each one of them has 6 screens and they're monitoring the different traffic devices. In the back row here, you see that's where the supervisors sit. Those of you that don't know where the TMC is located, we're actually up in Smyrna. As you go up Route 1, you see off to the northbound, you'll see off to your left-hand side, you'll see this big building. It says Emergency Operations Center. A lot of people call it the DEMA building, but we are co-located there with DEMA on the left-hand side, TMC and traffic operations on the right-hand, and actually in the middle is a little section where State Police COM is. So what I want to do is basically describe, I'm using a scenario of a Hurricane 3, Category 3 that comes and hits Delaware. That was probably the best way to give you a scenario, how we activate and what we do. And for those who don't know, a Category 3 hurricane is basically sustained winds of 111 miles per hour to 130 miles per hour. So what will happen is we'll activate the Rehoboth room. The TMC management staff, which we have offices around, and we will basically move into the Rehoboth room and we will go into 24-hour shifts and do our operations and command and control functions there. We typically monitor the weather from different devices, whether it be road sensors, National Weather Service, some of the other products that are available to us. We start our bridge calls. All right, bridge call, we do internal bridge calls with a lot of the upper management, the district engineers. We will basically make sure everybody's on the same sheet of music and see what our approach is going to be. We also get on DEMA bridge calls. And what that does all the state agencies will get together and we'll start discussing what the state's approach is going to be to this incident. And then what most of you have never heard of is the Delmarva Emergency Task Force Bridge Calls. And what that is on the Delmarva Peninsula, you have all the emergency managers in the eastern shore of Maryland and Virginia, and some of the law enforcement and the state emergency operations centers. So we'll also start scheduling what we call emergency response units. And these are the gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, that we put out on the crew or out on the roads that have cameras that bring that image back into the TMC, and that we will also be able to task out and then respond to any incident on the road to help clear up that road. We also have emergency support coordinators when DEMA is activated. That is my role and function there. I'll become the ESC, and what happens is DEMA will task DelDOT to what we call Web EOC, and that tasking will come through me. I will send it over to the supervisors. They will task the yards, and then from the yards, once it comes back completed, then I will just reverse that process, put it in Web AOC, send it back to DEMA that is completed, and that's how they keep a running total of what we've done and what we've completed. And we'll also have, pre-landfall, debris management team starts to coordinate. And that's where DelDOT, we'll sit down with DEMA and we'll send them down to NREC just to make sure that who is on duty, what shifts, what we anticipate is going to happen, and if we need to bring in our federal partners. This right here is a picture of the Rehoboth room. You can see in the background there on the left-hand side, that actually goes into the TMC. But this is where we sit down, we monitor weather, we monitor the dash cameras, and we basically coordinate our response. So this is landfall. The ERU and the yard trucks, we actually have 42 dash cameras out there, 5 in each district, and then we have about 6 or 7 ERU trucks. They are out on the road throughout the event, providing live feeds back into the TMC so we can actually see what's happening live on the roads. Once again, the ESCs, we're monitoring any taskings that we get from DEMA for support either on the roads or in a hurricane situation, it would be sand or whatever the state requires, they'll task us that way. As we say, we continuously monitor the weather from these multiple sources. We have hydrology stations that we monitor back bay flooding, and we watch the high tide cycles, especially over 3 high tides, and depends on which way the winds are blowing. As the winds blow up, from the south going north, that tide cycle, it will keep that water up into the bay. And through the tide cycles, it just keeps adding more water into the bay. And typically we have back bay flooding. That's why we watch that wind direction. And we also watch for sustained speeds and gusts. At 40-mile-an-hour sustained winds, we want to take our DelDOT folks off the roads and either put them in their trucks or put them someplace safe. We also do the 4-hour reports. That's when we start sending those out on the status of the transportation system. We also be sending out our incident management reports then. And as we sit there and monitor and wait for landfall, we're also responsible for doing evacuation requests. Typically, those evacuation requests do come in the middle of the night. They'll come to us in 1s and 2s, and we will pick people up. I will dispatch a ERU unit to go pick somebody up and take them to a shelter. At the same time, we're doing public messaging. A couple of different ways we do it. The WTMC 1380. We put it on Twitter, Facebook, AM/FM radios, and CR puts out his community relations reports. This right here is actually one of our trucks. You'll see this camera right here. It's one of our unique cameras. We're starting to replace some of our dash cameras. That camera provides a 360-degree view. They control it inside the TMC. We can zoom in, zoom out. It has some very awesome night forensics. So if you see that, we get a lot of people, hey, what is that thing? But that front one's a camera. That thing looks like a cowbell on the back. That's actually a weather sensor on those trucks. And it'll also provide weather data as they go down the road back into the center. This should be landfall. like I said, we're still monitoring WebEOC for the taskings. Like I said, once before DEMA tasks. We start looking at damage reports that come into the TMC. That usually comes in through the yards. We'll also get it from the DEMA or the emergency county emergency managers. We start sending out damage assessment teams, and those folks are typically our drone teams. We're starting to use those a lot. They will go out, they will take an aerial view of the damage, provide that back into us, and then we will upload it and either provide it to DEMA. And some of our action pictures have actually made it to the National Weather Service. Districts start cleaning up their primary roads. The TMC starts to do whatever request for DEMA or debris cleanup. And if it gets to a point for debris cleanup that exceeds, our capabilities, the county's capabilities, we will go into what's called a debris management plan. Notice I said it down by DelDOT. All right, we activate the debris management plan. Actually, I threw this picture in here. This is a picture Alistair took last year, or this past tornado. And we were able to see, if you look at the blue tarps on the roofs, we could actually see the path of that tornado, which there was some type of discrepancy of whether that tornado actually damaged that neighborhood. But this is perfect proof and perfect use of the drones. So the debris management plan. And we say it's activated by DelDOT. A lot of people say DelDOT. Why is DelDOT responsible for activating a debris management plan? And that's going to go back to DEMA, where we're correlated in that building. DEMA is basically the lead agency, coordinates a comprehensive emergency preparedness training, response, and recovery and mitigation services, for the state. And it also states in Title 20, all state agencies are required to provide DEMA with any and all personnel, equipment, facilities, materials, or other assets during the period of disaster, emergency, or threat to include a period of recovery. So basically, when we get tasked by DEMA, we respond until the incident's cleared up. DEMA is also responsible for developing what's called the DOP, the Delaware Emergency Operations Plan. That establishes a framework through which the state of Delaware prepares for, responds to, and recovers from a variety of incidents. This plan is strategic. It has the big picture. It doesn't tell exactly how we're supposed to do things. It depends on the agency to develop their operational and tactical plans. And that's what that last section says. So what we've done at DelDOT, we have developed some of our operational plans, and here's a list of them. You got Salem Hope Creek Nuclear Generating Stations, your all hazards evacuations plans with evacuations plans from each county. Christiana Mall Emergency Transportation Management Plan, how we would evacuate the mall, at the same time being able to get first responders in. Delaware Transit Corporation has developed their own plan. We have snow emergency plans, snow emergency operations management, which each of the districts provide to the TMC. Bridge closure plan, toll plaza modified plan, how we would close the toll plazas. The Dover Air Force Base incident plan, if something was to happen on the base, how are we going to respond and maintain those roads in front of the base? Obviously, the Speedway plan, the Firefly event plan, if there's a major incident, how do we get those people evacuated out of Firefly? COOP plan, which some of you are familiar with, how do we recover our business continuity? Fuel locations map, and then that debris management plan. All right. Inside the DOP, though, you're going to see this matrix. And what I've highlighted in blue, and this is how we are responsible for developing a debris management plan. It says in here, blue, Department of Transportation along the bottom. As you see across, you see S's. Those are support. All right. It says we are direct support of some of those agencies. Basically, we look at it, we are direct support of every plan out, anything that happens. But the primary ones, the ones that are highlighted in blue, they have an L at the bottom. All right. And that means we are the lead agency. And there's two groups that we're the lead agency. One is the transportation group, and one is the debris management group. So the transportation group, submission of transport group is to ensure integrity of the state's transportation infrastructure. This includes roadways, railways, airports, marine ports, and other related components, basically all modes of transportation. The debris management group is the mission of the debris management group to facilitate and coordinate the removal and collection of basic debris in the state. This is a big plan, all right? Base plan is 62 pages, and then you have appendices, which is 138 pages. And then we just added over this past year from NOAA, National Oceanic and NOAA, all right, Delaware Marine Debris Emergency Response Guide, which is 52 pages. Basically, that tells us how we're going to clean up any debris that gets into our waterways. So the primary agencies in that debris plan are going to be DEMA, obviously DelDOT, and DENREC. Now we have a lot of the support agencies that you can see on the side, and that list is actually longer than that. It says in the plan that DelDOT would appoint a debris manager who will oversee the activation of the plan. The debris manager is responsible for full implementation of the plan, daily operations, control of debris cleanup, and management sites, and all debris staff. And we'll basically work with the Transportation Management Center. Obviously, we're located in the TMC, so that's an easy given. We'll coordinate with other state and local agencies to facilitate the collection, sorting, removal, and final disposition of debris. So, kind of redundant here, but the intent of the debris plan is to facilitate coordination, removal, collection, expedite recovery efforts in the impacted area, and meet the requirements of federal reimbursement. That one bottom line is the key. If we meet the thresholds for the Stafford Act through FEMA, we can actually apply for 75% reimbursement through the feds. So that is why we have such stringent data collection. Basically, we watch everything we do. I'm going to pay for that one. All right, DelDOT will clear primary, secondary, tertiary state-maintained roads as soon as practical. Basically, it's the snow evacuation routes. The state resources will support local authorities if they're overwhelmed. The county emergency managers will contact us. We'll support them. And if they are overwhelmed, then we will try to get them into a debris management site. This key right here, the state will avoid if possible cleaning up any debris on privately owned state property or owned property, unless it's imminent that's going to be a threat to life, public health, and safety. County emergency should encourage any of the homeowners from putting storm to the curb and having the state resources pick it up. We know that happens, and it happens over and over and over. We identify our clearance priorities. Basically, we clear our routes to the yards first, and then we will clear evacuation routes to and from hospitals, police departments, fire departments. And then we go to the interstates and make sure I-95, 295, I-495, those major highways, those arterials are clear. I'm actually running out of time here. So long story short, we will put the debris management sites and we will, if we have to basically implement a debris management sites, we will work with DENREC, work with our partners, and we will contract those out. But still DelDOT is the final, or is the debris manager and responsible for the cleanup. All right, and that's pretty much the end of the, and I apologize for running out of time, but I'm sure if there's any questions, you can contact me.
No problem. Thank you, Dwayne. Yeah, if there's any questions, you can email him directly, but we can also ask you to stay a couple minutes just in case one pops in on the chat. So with that, CR McLeod will be discussing the evolution of community outreach at the department. You're good.
Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. I'm glad to have the opportunity to talk to you all this morning about public outreach and our evolving efforts to engage the public in our work as broadly as possible. Now, I would surmise that at some point in your DelDOT career, regardless of your job, that you will engage in public outreach for the department. And this usually will happen at a social outing, and not so much in the past year, but you'll run into someone, you'll be talking about what you do for a living, and you say, oh, I work for DelDOT. You can say, oh, I work in the finance department for DelDOT. Doesn't matter. And so the next question will be, oh, so hey, do you know what's going on at such and such a road? Or do you know how I can get the traffic signal adjusted by my house? And now you may not have any idea about a specific project details or getting into really how certain things are done. But if you put that person in contact with a person who does know, if you directed them to the website, if you've given them help in reporting a road condition, then you've done on a micro level very good public outreach. So thank you. Now, on a macro level, public outreach can seem to be more complex and confusing. Everyone is busy, family, work, the latest Netflix shows, everyone's attention is in demand. And did you know that there are now more than 7 million apps available on the Apple and Google stores for your smartphone? So lots to keep us busy and distracted. Everyone has places to go, and DelDOT has a significant responsibility for making that happen. And keeping the public informed is a critical need for us to effectively do our jobs. It's not just about cars and roads. It's also about public transportation, paratransit, bike, and pedestrians. There are users and advocates for all modes of transportation. And these stakeholders need to be included when we are talking about a project and how each mode is going to be accommodated. We're investing more than ever in truly having a multimodal transportation system. And understanding what's important to the public is not an area we can overlook. Now, some of you likely have had an example of a project that failed to move forward or encountered significant pushback for a variety of reasons, or sometimes, frankly, because of a lack of understanding about the intent and the need for the project. And sometimes they just die on the vine. And several come to mind, and let's just call them the Walking Dead. Now, we've learned a thing or two, and we can continue to adapt, not only how we're doing public outreach, but how we can make sure it is both effective and engaging. Dare I say, exciting? We have more tools than ever at our disposal and methods to engage the public, which is a great opportunity for us to engage with our stakeholders. Now, way back when, we would just put out a press release, we'd post the meeting information, as required, we'd maybe send out notices in the mail, and we check the boxes for that. That's our outreach. And we maybe had a couple of people come out to one of our public sessions, and again, that met the criteria for performing public outreach for the department. However, most notably, the media market really has changed. Newsrooms, even locally, used to be very robust, and reporters were dedicated to covering transportation issues, and they became very informed about our work. And that was a valuable tool for us for having reporters that were communicating about how the process works, how projects get planned and developed and done. And that largely no longer exists. And unless it is a significant project, the I-95 project, which is about to get underway, for example, news coverage can be hard to come by. So we still communicate with the media, don't get me wrong, but we can't rely on coverage or for those opportunities about public participation in our project planning and development. We have to be the champions of our work to the public. So getting people to show up is half the battle, in whatever medium that may be. For example, in an average month, we engage with nearly 300,000 users on Facebook and social media. Now that's a good number. That's a really good number. But that still leaves a significant number that we aren't reaching because they don't use social media or they limit their interactions. There is no one-size-fits-all approach, and we have to be mindful of that and continue to think about how we can meet all of our stakeholders where they are. We can't assume everyone has a smartphone at the ready or has Wi-Fi or even has the ability to take off work to come attend a public meeting in person. Again, when we're back able to do that. we need to provide multiple channels for the public to engage with us. So this past year has really forced us to adapt to new mediums. You heard earlier from Dan and Jesus about our virtual public workshops, which really have been a great success. We've really been able to engage with the public even during a time when we can't do that in person, and it's really been effective. This will be a valuable tool that we continue to use, but however, as Jesus noted, we should also continue in-person meetings and workshops, and when we're safely able to do so. And we also now have the ability to live stream. We've really been able to work through the bugs of using this technology, and thanks to Todd and his team, we continue to get better at it. So this is a valuable tool in our toolbox going forward, but we should also get back to meeting people one-on-one. So one way we do this effectively is using our legislators. We have they're a valuable resource in how we continue to engage with the public. Again, if there's something that someone is not happy about, they're likely going to engage with their local legislator. And they're going to hear about it, they're going to voice their concern or complaint. And one of the things that we do a great job of now, in my opinion, is we provide quarterly detailed updates to our legislators on what's happening in their specific district and what's in planning for their specific district. This really helps the legislators be informed and communicate with the constituents, and also helps them be advocates for us in the work that we're doing, because they understand why we're doing and what we're doing. So this keeps our legislators, informed. It really helps us as we can try to reach as many people as possible. In addition, large-scale initiatives like our working groups and our community advisory groups, such as the 5 Points Working Group, have been an excellent example of the work we have done to communicate to the public and engage around improving an area that for decades has proven very, very difficult to get work done. And credit to our planning team for the intensive amount of work that they have done to lead this effort. And we've already accomplished so much in an area that we really was stagnant for a number of years. And really, I think there's going to be a great outcome at the end of this effort. And we're already starting to plan another such effort with our Coastal Corridors group to, again, engage the public early on about what the problems are, what's important to the public, and what viable options are before we go out and invest a lot in a plan that may not have the support of the public. So again, getting out there and doing that early engagement is important. So what does success look like for our public engagement and public outreach going forward? Stakeholders have knowledge. That's really the key. I think that, for my team, whenever we talk to folks, if they call up, they may be agitated about a project or have concerns, helping them understand why we're doing what we're doing and the need for it. Also, the timeline is helpful. If that's the impact and the outcome, that's really critical and really goes a long way in helping people understand why we're out there every day, and there's a lot of construction happening across our state. So people also want to be heard. Their input is valued and considered. Having those one-on-one interactions, again, even you at a social outing, helping someone, hey, download the free DelDOT app. That goes a long way. Those little interactions really do. Even if you're not directly involved with a project per se, helping someone get answers is going to leave them with a positive perception of our department. And then finally, the department has clarity and certainty going forward about the projects that we're doing. And that's really what we want. We want to make sure that people understand that we've got a responsibility to keep our infrastructure safe and well maintained. And we want to also make sure that it's something that improves the quality of life for all of the residents and guests in our state. And continuing to engage with the public is really a valuable way that we're going to continue to do that, to continue meeting our stakeholders where they are. And that's going to continue to change. There's going to be the latest technology. There's going to be new and innovative things that we can do. And the department really needs to stay on the cutting edge of that. So we are continuing to reach everyone, and really all of us have a role to play. And that's one of my broad messages today, is that we all have a role to play in that public outreach effort for our department. So thank you very much for your attention. And if I may also add, DelDOT has a Toastmasters Club. We heard from Sarah Esposito earlier today. If you're interested in improving your public speaking skills, your leadership skills, check it out. Contact Susan Laws. It's a great organization. I've really enjoyed it. It's a great group of people to connect with across the department that you may not see every day. And I encourage everyone to take a couple of minutes to check it out. Thanks again.
Thank you, CR. So with that, we're going to turn it over to Peter Hegg and Scott Neidert, who will be providing an update on the Strategic Highway Safety Plan.
Good morning, everyone. Pretty sure most of you on the call know who I am, but if you don't, my name is Scott Neidert. I'm the department's Highway Safety Improvement Program Manager. And today I'd like to discuss a monumental undertaking that the department has done over the past year, and that is the adoption of the 2021 Delaware Strategic Highway Safety Plan. So in the presentation, we have a limited amount of time. We could talk about it all day, but want to go over the different folks that were involved, as well as the process, the goals and the objectives of the plan. So basically, what went into the plan and what do we want to get out of it? The different emphasis areas, so the different focus areas that we want to work on over the next 5 years, and then the different strategies and actions. What exactly do we want to do within each emphasis area? How do we want to drive down the number of fatal and serious injury crashes? And then last, we're going to follow up with the implementation of the plan. How are we going to do it? Who are we going to reach out to? And how are we going to get some of these projects out on the road? There were a lot of people involved in this task, and we had a core committee of the three safety partners of Delaware, DelDOT, the Office of Highway Safety, and the Delaware State Police. And then we also had a stakeholder committee who also participated, and they were instrumental in assisting the core committee in coming up with strategies and ideas. Some of the folks in the stakeholder committee included the City of Wilmington, the Delaware Department of Justice, our federal partners, FHWA and NHTSA, the University of Delaware T-Squared Center, as well as DMV and DelDOT Planning. So in a nutshell, this was our process. It took about 9 months from start to finish. We started out with looking at crash data, fatal and serious injury crashes for the previous several years. And then once we compiled that information, we then developed a draft emphasis area list. We then took that list to a virtual public workshop where we reached out to legislators, different stakeholders, and the citizens to see if they had any ideas or strategies that they could come up with or that they could assist us with. And then once we got their comments and their feedback, we switched into emphasis area team meetings where there were several folks from each emphasis area that just sat there and discussed for 2-3 hours at a time different ideas, different strategies that we could potentially input into the plan based on their respective emphasis area. That took place in the summer, and then in the fall, we compiled all the information, the crash data, the virtual public workshop comments, as well as the emphasis area team meeting results, and compiled that into a draft strategic highway safety plan. That was in the fall, and then we had a deadline of December 31st of 2020 to get it to FHWA for approval. And we did that with about 10 days to spare. So with that being said, I want to go back to the virtual public workshop. Originally, the idea was to have a one-day strategic highway safety plan summit. That was going to be in person, which is now kind of a foreign concept. But we invited to the workshop, we invited the strategic highway safety plan, the stakeholder committee. We invited members of advocacy groups as well as the general public, again, to give us feedback and any advice that they'd like to contribute. And then during the 30-day comment period, we received almost 70 comments electronically. And as you can see in the figure on the right, They were overwhelmingly in support of the strategic highway safety plan's goals, objectives, and the emphasis areas that we provided. So this figure right here, this is a copy of our approval letter from FHWA. This was the end goal of this process. As I said, we did it with about 10 days to spare, and now the fun begins trying to implement these strategies and really trying to knock down some of these fatal and serious injury crashes in Delaware. And with that, I will turn it over to Peter Heck, who will talk about the goals, the objectives, and the emphasis areas themselves.
Thank you, Scott. So those that don't know me, I'm Peter Heck, Chief of Traffic Engineering. So what is, I guess, the makeup of the Strategic Highway Safety Plan? That's kind of what I'll go over. So to start with that, we had to establish a goal and an objective. So that goal was set based on previous plans, but as well as national practices and campaigns. We want 0 deaths. We want 0 serious injuries. So towards 0 deaths is our goal. We do this through a multi-agency approach, what we call the 4 E's: the engineering, the education, the enforcement, and the emergency services. That then correlates to what our objective is. This is our measurable aspect to gauge where we are going to then go and take this effort over the next 5 years. How are we going to measure things based on fatalities and serious injuries? So based on the core committee, we agreed to reduce fatalities and serious injuries by 15% over the next 5 years. What that looks like is based on this chart that is shown on the screen. So this 15% reduction is based on a 5-year rolling average that, again, the core committee thought was the best approach to take this plan over the next 5 years, because that rolling average will accommodate significant increases and decreases within the data set. So that fluctuating data will be accommodated through that 5-year rolling average. So with it being said, are starting off of about 600 crashes, and we're getting down to about 515 crashes over that 5-year period. So where are we going to focus on? How are we going to address that 15%? So we have 8 data-driven emphasis areas. These emphasis areas account for 94% of the fatals and 85% of the serious injuries. These 8 emphasis areas include intersections, distracted driving, which is a new emphasis area, part of this plan compared to others in the past, impaired driving, road departure, pedestrians, motorcycles, unrestrained motors, and speeding. Now, some individuals may look at speeding and look, there's 2 emphasis areas with higher percentage above that: heavy vehicles, older drivers, older pedestrians. Why is that? Why did we choose speeding? Why did we jump 2 emphasis area 3 to speeding? Well, the reason being is higher speeds increase crash severity. When you increase crash severity, it leads to more fatals and more serious injuries. Based on that statistic or that element, the core committee agreed that speeding had to be an emphasis area moving forward through the 5-year plan with the strategic. There is one emphasis area that is a non-data driven emphasis area, and that is traffic records. When you think about data, it is always evolving. It becomes innovative. It's information. It's live. We want to utilize and leverage that information as it's evolving throughout time. And in doing so, that is why we've identified traffic records as the 9th emphasis area within the plan. So within each emphasis area, we then establish strategies and actions to, again, try to going back to our overall goal and objective. So with those strategies, they were vetted through, again, what Scott mentioned, that virtual process, the core committee communication, emphasis area team meetings, but also it was best practices provided nationally from our partners at FHWA, NHTSA, other state agencies. In addition, we wanted to continue to utilize proven safety countermeasures, such as high friction surface street, rumble strips, things that we know we are seeing success with. And we want to continue to highlight those within the strategies and actions. We also want to elevate and continue to support other core agencies initiatives such as Office of Highway Safety and State Police. Now, some examples of strategies and actions that are included within the plan include automated enforcement, highway patrols, crossing guard training, safety countermeasures associated with connected autonomous vehicles, enhancements to, again, social media and the usage. So with that, all those different aspects are included in this strategy, in the plan, again, to address each and every emphasis area. And yes, there are probably overlapping strategies and actions amongst each emphasis area. Now with that, we will be rolling out a virtual public meeting on March 18th, 2021. And that will be, again, another way of educating the public or any attendees where to find the plan, what is in the plan, where do we see ourselves going over the next 5 years. Now, the conclusion part of it is now implementation. How are we going to do that? How are we going to measure it over time? What are we going to produce in kind of the end goal annually? So we want to continue to utilize the emphasis area teams and the stakeholders and engaging them. CR mentioned that within his presentation, which is probably a great segue for this. Again, utilizing our partners in any aspect possible, legislators, other core agencies, public, to provide feedback to see where we need to kind of utilize and put our resources in the various strategies or actions, or even add a strategy and action that may not be a focus or an area, but the data may support it. We want to continue to engage and meet with the core committee or have that progress. Ironically, we have a meeting in the next 2 weeks with the core committee to kind of go over and kick off where the beginning of the year and discuss the public workshop that is scheduled in March. We also have annual reports that we will are committed to completing with our partners with Federal Highway and then also NHTSA, again, with the communication with our partners at Office of Highway Safety and Delaware State Police. So with that, I conclude and have any questions.
Thank you, Peter and Scott. Right now, there are no questions, but we have a couple minutes. You can hang around for a few more minutes in case any do come in.
Yeah, it's fine.
But thank you very much for your presentation. All right. We just had one come in. Can the new strategic highway safety plan be accessed online somewhere?
Yes. So on DelDOT.gov, safety, there's a link. The header at the top of the strategic highway safety plan provides access to the plan.
Okay. All right. Thank you, guys. So with that, Veronica Vanterpool will be sharing an update on the microtransit pilot in the Georgetown and the Millsborough area. Veronica, can you hear us?
Yes, good morning. Can you hear me?
You might be muted.
Muted?
Yeah, we're good.
Excellent. You all can hear me okay? Todd, can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Great,
thank
you. Thanks, everyone. Good morning from DTC's Wilmington office. When I presented at the winter workshop last January, I talked about a new service model of transit delivery that the new Office of Innovation was looking into and exploring. And since then, we won a federal grant to actually move beyond concept, which I talked to you all about last year, into a pilot that's going to launch in April of this year. So I want to give you all an update on that pilot, which we've named DART Connect. And it's how we introduce on-demand microtransit in rural Sussex County and talk a little bit about what on-demand microtransit even is. The federal grant goal was to improve mobility and enhance rider experience using innovative tech and service models. And DTC's goal was to improve options and transit experience for rural Delawareans. And we selected Georgetown and Millsborough in Sussex County as our pilot service zones. We are partnering with transportation software provider called Via Transportation, and Via has done dozens of deployments around the world in all different types of geographic contexts, from rural Alabama to big cities like Philadelphia, New York City, Chicago. And what on-demand microtransit is really going to do is transform the way we serve our customers, not just in rural communities, but it has potential for transit deserts that exist all throughout the state for different constituencies that we want to serve better. So we're really excited about this new opportunity that we have with the federal grant. So I just want to start a little bit with this mission for the Office of Innovation. When I spoke last year, we were just so new. This office is just about 14 months old at this point. I'm the first Chief Innovation Officer. We are a staff of 2. My colleague, Nathan Attard, is the strategic planner, and we've accomplished a lot in the past 14 months. I just want to share with you what we've developed as a mission and some goals. Some priorities that we've started in the Office of Innovation and are overseeing are the autonomous shuttles. George and Jane, I actually presented about them last year. Many of you are familiar with those shuttles. We're hoping to launch them in the spring, and you'll see them in operation at that point. You may have seen them in test mode being driven by Nate Attard, who's the lead shuttle operator. On-demand microtransit is another priority of the Office of Innovation. We're going to go into that. And we recently helped win, the Office of Innovation helped DTC and DelDOT win a new grant from FTA, where we're going to study barriers in the indoor operating bus environment and see the efficacy of different barrier types on the transmission of communicable diseases. So not just COVID, but how it might impact the transmission of the flu virus, for example. So we're excited to get started on that. Many of you are familiar with the goal of mobility as a right. Jennifer Cohen, I think, coined it, and it's something that really does underlie our goals here at Delaware Transit Corporation. We want to provide service that meets our customers' mobility needs, and which really connects them to expanded employment, housing, and recreational opportunity. Equity is really at the core of mobility as a right. So those who are most dependent on our service have safe, affordable, and convenient options. And this is particularly important in rural communities where the frequency of transit and the destinations served by transit are limited. So in order to get more people to use transit, we need to offer new models. So why did we pick Georgetown and Millsborough for a microtransit pilot? Well, the FTA grant highlighted 2 key criteria: rural communities and opportunity zones. And Georgetown and Millsborough fit those criteria. We also know that research suggests that rural communities have high concentration of adults over 65. They often have high concentrations of individuals in low-income jobs, particularly in manufacturing. And we know Georgetown and Millsborough are home to Purdue and Montaire and other manufacturing and ag industries. Rural communities have high rates of individuals living with a disability, and they also have high concentrations and rates of individuals who are persons of color, particularly African Americans and Latinos. So that was particularly representative in these 2 communities. So we wanted to ensure that these communities are receiving the services that they need and have access to them. We have heard at DTC for years that rural communities throughout the state of Delaware are clamoring for improved transit service. This is one of the reasons why we wanted to put forth these communities in our application. So DTC already provides existing DART bus service in these communities. We have 5 different routes. You'll see the picture shows one of them, the 206 that serves Georgetown right now. But service is often infrequent. There are limited destinations. There's certainly first and last mile gaps in the services that we provide. So that means it's difficult for many customers or potential customers to access our existing bus routes and our stops. It's actually one of the reasons why the flex routes, which you'll see the flex zone in blue, were introduced several years ago. So customers did have another option. They could request a deviation from this blue zone route to get a little closer to where they needed to be. So we want to enhance this and provide expanded services in this area. So we will continue to provide the existing fixed route buses, but we're going to make some changes to the flex route buses. And many of you may have seen, this is an example of our smaller bus. It is currently serving on the flex routes. If you look at the top right of the picture, you'll see the 5 routes that we serve. And what we're looking to do is change the 901 and the 902. Those are no longer going to exist the way they exist right now as flex routes. These vehicles are the ones that we'll be using for our on-demand microtransit pilot, DART Connect. We're going to wrap them differently and brand them differently. But just to give you a sense of the vehicles we'll be using with the same drivers that are currently operating them. What is DART Connect? It's microtransit, and key elements of microtransit are we're using much smaller vehicles that are able to be more nimble and flexible. They have a smaller footprint. So instead of having a 40-foot bus, we're having a 26 or a 25-foot bus. On demand means no more schedules. It really means as soon as you either dial a phone number or open this new DART Connect app, you'll be connected with a ride. It allows for trip planning, trip booking, and trip payment all in one app. And those of you who are familiar with DART services, you'll know we have a separate DART Transit app where you can track and plan your trip. And we also have DART Pass where you can pay. We, at this point, don't have one integrated app. But with this DART Connect app, we will be integrating all of these functions to make it easier for the customer and provide ease of experience. So how does microtransit work? So imagine this blue line that you're seeing is West Market Street in Georgetown, which is a main corridor. There's so many services, amenities, and facilities located on West Market Street. You have the Georgetown Circle, which is a recreational area and park. You have the public library. You have an elementary school and a middle school. You have employment centers and health facilities. Well, anyone who's traveling along West Market Street on this particular corridor, and there's probably many people who are traveling along that, will open the app and be directed to connect with a vehicle that's traveling on that corridor. And they may be asked to walk maybe a minute or two from where their current origin is, where they currently are when they're requesting the ride, to connect with other riders who might be going in the same direction. So it's sort of pooling shared rides together, very similar to our existing transit experience. Another great feature about DART Connect and microtransit is this customized app. So we issued a contest of DTC employees, and the winning name was DART Connect, suggested by 3 of our colleagues. We were able to design the graphics of the app. In fact, a shout out to Nada Todd, who was very clever to put some key landmarks into this app, such as the Sussex County Courthouse, and on the far right, you may see the Indian River Bay in Millsborough. So we're able to provide some very detailed graphics that are specific to our geography. And on the left, you'll see the service territory for our pilot. How does this work? You either open up this new app, and you'll see on the right a rendering of what the app is going to look like, or for those individuals who do not have a smartphone, you can dial a number and be connected with a live person. And in both scenarios, you will be given instructions either on your phone or via this live person for how to connect to the vehicle that will get you closest to your destination. So if you are familiar with Uber and Lyft, these screens are very common and familiar to you. So you basically open the app and you indicate where you are, you indicate where you want to go. And if you look on the third screen to the far right, it will indicate to you where you need to walk as a transit user / pedestrian to connect with the vehicle that is closest to you that will be taking you to your final destination. So just thinking about the West Market Street example that I shared earlier, and how so many people are likely to be traveling along that corridor, just given all the facilities and resources located there. What this app is doing is aggregating all the different people who are requesting rides in a particular area and instructing them where to go for the vehicle to pick up a number of people at the same time. So this is a different experience than Uber or Lyft, where it's specific to you as the user, where you're saying, I want to be picked up at 119 Lower Beach Street exactly, and a vehicle will pick me up here and deliver me directly to 900 Public Safety Boulevard. This experience of DART Connect is not doing exactly that. It's not taking you exactly from origin to destination. It's taking you to the closest spot in both your origin and your destination. So what makes microtransit unique, it's dynamically routed. So the routes are changing all the time. This is not fixed route anymore. And this is why schedules are no longer available. As soon as you open the app, you will be directed to the vehicle that is in your area that will get you nearest to where you want to go. And on the left, you see a little bit of a simulation for the operator, the driver, what the driver will be seeing on their tablets when a ride is requested. In our pilot, we are serving Georgetown and Millsborough only for the first phase. So that means if you're live in Georgetown and you want to go somewhere in Georgetown, you live in Millsborough, want to go somewhere in Millsborough, you live in Georgetown and want to travel to Millsborough, all of those are valid trips under the pilot. And here are just some examples again of the existing service and the vehicles that we use. Again, this 901, this Georgetown Flex is going to cease to exist as the 901. Again, also the 902, and is going to be part of the Microtransit On Demand DART Connect pilot. We are going to be wrapping the vehicles with a new brand, and this is just to give you a quick view of what that might look like. The back-end operations provide a lot of information. So you'll be able to see all the vehicles that are on the road, the trips that they are making, the passenger profiles who are awaiting the trips. So it's really a very interactive, real-time experience for both the people on the back end, the driver, and the user and customer who's requesting the ride. So as we wrap up, I just want to quickly talk about the phases. So I've explained to you phase one, which is really using DART Connect to connect people from point A to B in Georgetown and Millsborough or between. It's really improving the idea of the flex routes, currently serving those communities by improving transit coverage and convenience. But what we're thinking about in future phases is for customers in Georgetown and Millsborough, they'll be able to then see bus schedules for all of DART routes, all DART routes within Sussex County. And this will make it easier for customers to plan a trip outside of their service zones of Georgetown and Millsborough, because they can then see in real time the fixed route options that DART currently provides to travel to places outside of the service zone. So if you are in Georgetown and you want to get to somewhere other than Georgetown or Millsborough, you'll be able to get the information of the buses that DART currently provides that get you to that area outside of those pilot service zones. In phase three, the trip planning zone is extended statewide. So you can request a trip from either Georgetown or Millsborough to Wilmington, for example. And the algorithm of the software will connect you to the next departing bus at the Georgetown Transit Hub, for example, that is going towards Wilmington. So it actually becomes a fully functional trip planning tool in real time. And 2 more slides left. I just want to share that VIA does have experience in a lot of different cities with a similar kind of pilot and deployment. So this is from Austin, Texas, and they also had a flex route service. And what they found is they doubled ridership and decreased cost. And I just want to end on some FAQs. They might be more in the chat box. When are we launching? In April. How much will this new service cost? $2. We want it to be comparable to our existing DART bus fare. What will the hours of operation be? They will be the same as our existing flex route service, which is Monday through Friday from these hours in the morning and into the evening. And is wheelchair service available? Yes, it will be. In fact, if you are someone who utilizes a wheelchair, you will not have to walk, as I explained in a previous example, to a nearest intersection or another location, as another pedestrian who is ambulatory will be instructed to do. If you're in a wheelchair, you will be picked up exactly where you request your ride and delivered exactly to your destination. And with that, I want to thank you for your time. And I hope that when DART Connect launches in April, so many of you are with us in Georgetown and Millsborough testing it out. We look forward to seeing you. Thank you.
Thank you, Veronica. I think there was a couple questions. You see those and address them. I think a few you've already talked about.
Let's see. Yep, what will the cost to the public be? $2. Are the fares for microtransit fixed or they depend on distance? So they'll be fixed within the zone. So if you're traveling anywhere, again, within Georgetown, within Millsborough, or between the two, it will be $2. Is this app in Spanish? How are you rolling this out to the large Hispanic communities in Georgetown and Millsborough? Javier, in fact, you're on my email list, and I want to talk with you about that. But yes, we do have publications, or rather outreach materials in Spanish. We have begun our outreach, particularly to employers. So we are compiling our outreach list. As I said, we've already started with employers in both communities. We've already started with legislators in Sussex County. So we're working through the list, and we're providing these materials in English and Spanish. And will the DART Connect pilot operate concurrent with Flex Routes 901 and 902? No, they will be replacing the 901 and the 902 during the pilot period. And I think that was it.
Okay, thank you very much, Veronica. See you later. Well, I guess it's my turn now. I had the dreaded time slot right before lunch. Lucky for me, I thought this year I didn't have Big ZD aroma in the background, as everybody's giving me death glares, trying to wrap it up before lunch. But now I've been made the promise to do some sort of interpretive dance along with my presentation by the secretary. So looking forward to that. Not working. Try to. It's not. All right, we're going to just blame that on the pandemic, like most things this year. Just happens, right? So my presentation today is to overview a lot of the manuals that have been updated in the past year, as well as will be updated in the near future. There's a lot of effort going on for this across the department with our staff as well as our consultant partners. And if I've missed any of these, feel free to provide those in the Q&A section on Zoom. Next slide.
Guess not, John.
All right. So I can break down my dances now. So anyway, we're gonna just go with it until I can get the slides to show up. So there's quite a few that are out there that we are updating as well as developing. For specific questions on those documents, I would advise you to reach out to those groups in particular. Do something with that. So in September 2020, we updated the standard specifications. This was a major effort to remove the passive voice and replace it with the imperative mood. We had intended to make this document more concise and more clear. And projects that were not at semifinal plans on November 1st were to proceed with the new specs. All right. I apologize for the technical difficulties we're having. The slides will be online, after the presentation. We also did the standard construction details in September. Major effort on this was to update for guardrail and barrier modifications for MASH compliance. We set up the same implementation schedule. We reduced a lot of the redundant dimensions that were present. We also have the pipe video manual that we're developing. We've changed that name to Pipe Inspection and Remediation Guide. This was developed to provide inspection guidance as well as acceptance and remediation guidance. It compiles the industry best practices and does not have contract governance unless it's specifically cited in the contract. It also has some chapters in there discussing remediation techniques for when you do have a deficient pipe. So that covers both the three RCP, thermoplastic, and corrugated metal pipes. There's a link for this guide on the publications page and also in the construction manual wiki. And we're going to have more detail on that specific guide at the lessons learned workshop in March. Next is the road design manual. We are currently updating this. It's been, it hasn't been updated since since 2011. We completed a user survey to gather some feedback as to things that people felt that was needed to be updated in the process. I think a lot of it is reference to outdated material or other manuals that are outdated. So we're going to clean that up, and the desire is to have more specific Delaware design criteria. So we would do that and adopt other national manuals like the AASHTO Green Book and specify versions of which one to use. Also, streamline the document and relocate some other guidance to the DRC. We're hoping to get that completed by the end of 2021. So the pedestrian accessibility standards. So we're rewriting the past manual to remove ambiguity, improve clarity, and ease of understanding for users, establish minimum standards compliant with federal requirements. We're also going to do additional design guidance with sections on scoping and other design considerations. And we want to refine, develop, and memorialize the request for practical exceptions in the update to the manual, as well as the ADA inspection and acceptance process. Our goal for this is summer 2021. The team support manual is being developed. It's a new manual that's outlining the basic processes and requirements for developing right-of-way plans. This includes outlining what services team support offers, a chart of the plan review process, descriptions of the standards and formats for documenting and submitting survey and property ownership information, guide to where you can find these sort of records when you're developing your plans, concurrence meeting requirements, and other templates and samples. Materials manual, they're in the early stages of a rewrite on this document. During the last year, they've conducted a bunch of interviews to gather institutional knowledge. It intends to provide guidelines for material sampling, testing, and analysis for M&R staff and suppliers. So they focused primarily initially on the precast members and now they're nearing a final draft on that. Working on updating all inspection forms with the completion date of 2022. Development Coordination Manual. The focus of this update is for Chapter 2 on traffic analysis and improvements. Looking to restructure to reflect the PDCA and follow our current processes for things like the TIS, TOA, TIDs, area-wide studies, and other signal and off-site improvements. So this will require a public review and comment period, and the goal is for fall 2021. Survey Guidebook. We are in the early stages of this. They're basically going to evaluate the current content, reach out to the users and get some feedback and see if there's anything that needs updating. And the goal for that is July 2021. Traffic Design Manual. This updates to improve the process for design of signals and ITMS devices. The changes include removing some of the figures and tables that are in there now that come out of other documents because that information is also outdated. So they're looking to direct it with text to those other documents. So the proposed updates should be going out to a few sections within the department for review this spring with the completion of summer 2021. The lighting policy. This was updated in July 2020. Its prior version was the 2012 Lighting Design Guidelines. It's a similar format to the Traffic Design Manual. It also includes processes and a flow chart or a form to determine when lighting is warranted at certain locations. And it also includes guidelines and factors to consider for photometric calculations. Project delivery selection process. I know Jason Hastings in his presentation this morning talked a little bit about this with the Cmgc discussion. So it's really to provide a structured approach for selecting these sort of alternative delivery methods. So the Cmgc design build and design bid build. It also has forms and worksheets in there that you can document your analysis on your selection. So that's completed, but I think there's an update coming this spring. The quality manual or plan, last update in 2009. We're updating the plan to capture the current practices and updating all those out-of-date links that we're having across many of our documents. So that completion is scheduled for early 2022. Bridge Design Manual. There's a couple updates coming for 2021. The update includes improving the MASH details and other minor miscellaneous things. That's anticipated in March. And the 2022 update is for the typical details section in section 300 and to adopt the 9th edition of AASHTO LRFD design specs. And that's early 2022 as well. The Bridge Inspection Manual was recently updated to include some minor changes in Chapter 4 of the Quality Control and Quality Assurance Bridge Inspection Procedures. Next slide. The Bridge Element Inspection Manual was also updated recently to include an added element, and they updated the MBI condition table. And if you go 2 more slides. There's also 2 new bridge manuals that are being developed. Bridge Load Rating Manual and the Bridge Modeling and Forecasting Manual. The Bridge Load Rating Manual will outline load ratings, posting restrictions, and other hauling permit review procedures. The Modeling and Forecasting Manual describes the development of models for analyzing bridge conditions and looking at the budget going forward. So these are both expected to come out in spring of 2021. Next slide. The last thing I just wanted to share was that we're doing a few new things on wiki pages, like the construction manual. We developed a CAD wiki and a ProjectWise wiki. So that has the CAD manual on there, the 3D modeling guidelines and manual, other EIs. I know Dave Kleinot's going to mention those a little bit tomorrow. And then we've also done the ES2M design guide wiki, which has a whole bunch of erosion and sediment and stormwater documents that are good references. So with that, that's all I had. I apologize for the technical difficulties. Hopefully this gave you a brief overview of things that are on the horizon or have recently been developed. I think we're on time. Can't get the 5 minute sign, so.
Put the agenda down.
Okay. Time is up. Okay, thank you. Is there any Q&A or we're good? Okay. All right, so we have the agenda for day 2 on the screen. Tomorrow's session starts at noon. And like I said, we're going to be running to about 3:45. So Sandy should have sent you a separate link for tomorrow's session that you could find in your email. And for those that are unable to attend tomorrow, make sure you complete your evaluation form. It should be sent out tomorrow and submitted by Friday. Thank you, everyone, and thank you all our presenters today, and we will see you tomorrow.